Chapter 493. Of course I have. Feng Bujue's voice suddenly came from behind Lu Te. Therefore, I will not die so easily. Lu Te was startled when she heard that. Then she realized that the Feng Bujue that she was using the molten metal to mince had dissolved into a light purple smoke and disappeared. Name: Phantom Madam's Caress item type. Armor, quality, excellent, defense points, weak element. None special effect. Create an illusion of the user in the target's eyes. The glove must be in contact with the target's body to activate. Cooldown of 15 minutes. The illusion can only be seen by the user and the target. The target must have normal vision. Equip requirement: level 38 and above. Workmanship Embark. The original owner of this pair of gloves is a mysterious woman, a sexy, seductive creature. Looks like it is best to limit physical contact with you within 5 seconds. Any longer, and it will be very dangerous. Feng Bujue looked at the disappearing illusion and said, "Currently, you are in the so-called second form, right? You are indeed very powerful. Powerful attack, excellent speed, and the ability to create an energy explosion within a certain range," he said as he retreated. "Not only that, your self-healing ability is also very impressive. For example, the close-range explosive attack that you used on number 23 earlier. To other people, it would cause quite a lot of damage, but to you, it is just enough to allow you to heal instantly." Humph! Lu Te leaped forward and said coldly, "Did you say that based on your own analysis or Zero's information?" "About that," Feng Bujue replied with a very annoying laugh. Lu Te's expression changed slightly. She seemed to have suddenly realized something. "You remind me of a very unpleasant guy. Let me guess." Feng Bujue said, "That person wears glasses, has a creepy laugh, and knows everything." Yes. When Lu Te said this, he had already caught up to Brother Ju. "But, compared to him, you're so weak that you're not even worth mentioning." Before she finished speaking, she stretched out both arms, her fingers exploding. "And your unwarranted calmness is even more infuriating." Bang, bang, bang. 10 explosions rang out. The chain of white lights gathered together, causing an even more violent destructive effect. Looking down from the sky, a white path of light that spanned over 100 meters appeared on the street. The strength of the data increased in an instant and then returned to its original level. Lute muttered as he looked at his opponent while reorganizing his body. This is the effect of that skill. Compared to the injured Lute, Feng Bujue had retreated to a relatively safe distance and was not affected by the light explosion. He was as calm as ever as he muttered, "Oh, this is the level of fluid tension and recovery after being attacked. Kid, you think you have the energy to test me?" Lu Te's body recovered in just a few seconds. She raised her hand, and her eyes locked onto Feng Bujue's coordinates again. With a snap of her fingers, she snapped her fingers. Another beam of light shot into the sky and swallowed up Brother Ju's location. "It's not that you think you have it." Feng Bujue had once again escaped from the jaws of death and reappeared beside Lu Te. "You do have it. Name: Body Enhancement Technique. Modified Skill Card Property. Active Skill, Permanent Skill Type. Sorcery Effect. After activation, the player's physical ability will be greatly enhanced, strength and speed will be tripled, but life points will continue to decrease. When the life points reach 1%, the skill will automatically stop. No cooldown. Cannot be activated when the life points are less than 2%. Consumption. Decrease 1% life points per second. Learning requirement: Sorcery Mastery Serene. This was originally the basic spell of the 7 chapters of the Haunted Valley. It was later modified by the 250th generation of the Haunted Valley sect. It is more powerful, but the burden on the user is harsher. Even though it had not been long under Zero's guidance, Feng Bujue's realm had improved tremendously. This body enhancement spell, modified, was one of the fruits of his training. The effect of the skill had been increased from 2 times to 3 times, and the consumption had been changed from 2% to 1% every 5 seconds. These were 2 rather reasonable adjustments. However, The most crucial change was that the cooldown had been changed from 30 seconds to none. This change gave Feng Bujue a lot of room to use his skill. For example, he could use Instant Strike to increase his speed. When he needed to increase his physical skill by more than 3%, he could activate the skill, perform the action, and then deactivate the skill in between 0 to 1 second. This would only consume 1% of his life points. During the time when he did not need to activate the skill, he would maintain his normal state. For a normal person, this kind of repetitive action that required high concentration and reflexes was almost impossible to complete. If one had to make an analogy, the difficulty was similar to an F1 driver changing gears during a race. Normally, in an F1 race, the driver would have to change gears 2,500 times, or on average, once every 2 seconds. However, Feng Bujue, who had zero-time difference calculation, was used to the control of the extreme territory, so he could do it. Humph, I get it now. Lute looked at her brother Ju, who was using Instant Strike again, and scoffed. You activated and deactivated body enhancement spell, modified, in 1 second and used instant acceleration to avoid my attack, right? She paused. Using this method to deal with me is not a bad tactic, but no matter what, every time you do this, you will lose 1% of your life points, right? Oh, Feng Bujue's eyes shifted. Based on your tone, are you planning to use 100 energy blasts to attack me in a short period of time? He shrugged, opened his hands, and had an expression that said, I do not believe you. Even if it is you, that is impossible, right? Ha! Ha ha ha! Lute guffawed. Her dark skin rippled under the influence of her laughter. You are very interesting, Feng Bujue. After testing my basic ability, you want to test my limit? Do you think I will fall for such an obvious provocation? Have I been seen through? Feng Bujue's voice was filled with disappointment, but his expression was still nonchalant. Okay, since you know everything, how about you tell me now? He said as he reached into his backpack. How do you plan to deal with this thing? Chapter 494. Going back in time. Not long ago, on the rooftop of the shopping mall in the northern part of the city, just as Feng Bujue was conversing with Soul Seizing, suddenly, a strange light flashed across Soul Seizing's eyes. This large, burning skull was originally enveloped in orange-red flames, but now, the flames around it had turned blue, and it was a kind of cold fire that radiated with chilling air. Almost at the same time, Bloodthirsty and Repentant, who stood on both sides, bowed humbly and said to Soul Seizing, My king. Feng Bujue also raised his eyes to take a closer look at Soul Seizing. He realized that in the hollow eyes of the skull, there was a blurry image. It looked like a human figure wearing a crown. Feng Bujue. The voice came from Soul Seizing's eye sockets, and not from his mouth. This was undeniably from the human figure. I have heard your request. His voice was very scary. It sounded like countless screams were mixed together and then squeezed out. Just listening to him speak was enough to make one's hair stand on end and sweat profusely. Of course, there were those who were not affected by this kind of voice. King of the Abyss? Feng Bujue immediately used a normal tone to ask, How dare you? Bloodthirsty's right head turned around to glare at Brother Ju. A mere traveler from another dimension dares to call my king by his name. Enough. King of the Abyss cut off his subordinate. Feng Bujue has no manners. It's fine. Yes. Bloodthirsty demon answered submissively and quickly shut up. Feng Bujue saw that this king of the abyss was quite gentlemanly and was on his side. Instantly, he felt like he had a chance. He changed the topic and said, Forgive my rudeness, but how should I address my king? If you wish to serve the kingdom of the dead. King of the abyss slowly replied, Naturally, you will be my subject, understood. Feng Bujue did not wait for the other party to finish speaking. He knelt down on one knee and bowed. My king above, your divine might is unparalleled. Your magic power is boundless. Your literary and martial virtues are unparalleled. Your immortal blessings are eternal. Your lifespan is the same as the heavens, and you will rule the Jianghu for thousands of years. F*CK. The bloodthirsty demon was shocked. The shamelessness of this traveler from another world had exceeded its narrow imagination. Even a usually calm penitent broke out in a cold sweat. The king of the abyss hesitated for a few seconds before laughing. Ha ha ha. It seems like you really want to join me. Very good. Ha! Very good. Obviously, the king of the nether abyss had never been praised like this before. Most of the people who submitted to him were 30% respectful and 70% fearful. They bowed their heads and obeyed his every word. No one dared to say anything in front of this monarch. They didn't even dare to look at him for more than 2 seconds. This was also related to the setting of the king of the abyss. As a world boss, this four-pillar god had a very overpowered passive ability, aura of fear. As long as it was a creature weaker than him, they would be affected by this ability. When they saw or heard the image or voice of the king of the abyss, they would instinctively feel fear. This kind of fear was similar to the scarecrow's fear gas. It was a physical reaction, and it would bring with it a psychological pressure. And when they were really close to the king of the abyss, this kind of mental corruption would be even more obvious. Using a player as an example, if a player stood face to face with the king of the abyss, even if the two of them did nothing, the player's terror points would be maintained at around 30%. But Feng Bujue was an exception. No matter what kind of terror effect it would be ineffective on him. Therefore, when he was facing this king of the undead, he was able to speak without any pressure. Therefore, with Brother Jew's flattering words, the king of the abyss impression of this traveler from another world skyrocketed. As long as my king says the word, your subordinate will go through fire and water to fulfill it. Feng Bujue saw that the king of the abyss was so happy, so he used this as an excuse to change his position. He directly changed his address from your subordinate to your subordinate, using the king's status as his subordinate. I have heard some rumors about you, the king of the abyss said. According to rumors, Sammon Tyr views you as his nemesis. The prison of the Master of Time was once broken by you. The Court of Truth views you as an extremely dangerous criminal, and even the anomalies are talking about you. But that is just a false reputation, Feng Bujue said. Your subordinate's actions are like the light of a candle. Your Majesty's power is brighter than the moon. Ha ha ha. The king of the abyss had never been subjected to such an intense and concentrated attack of flattery before. His moral integrity was about to collapse. Looks like you are quite knowledgeable. I feel like vomiting. As an NPC, even the blood drinker was forced to complain by Brother Jew's actions. Of course, this was only on a mental level. All right, since you are so sincere and wish to serve me, the king of the abyss continued. I will give you a chance. He calmed down slightly and put on the airs of one of the four pillars of divinity. Even though you have a great reputation, I cannot accept you unconditionally. Do you understand? Your Majesty is wise. Feng Bujue said. Your subordinate agrees. I will go and get named now. You understand immediately. Not bad. The king of the abyss smiled. But Feng Bujue raised his head slightly, and a glint of cunning flashed through his eyes. The situation here is chaotic. The forces of the other pillars of divinity have all sent out their elites. Even though I am confident that I can take down 1 or 2 judges, I am afraid that even a tiger cannot defeat a pack of wolves. If they attack me together, your subordinate, that is your problem. The king of the abyss's tone chilled again. TSK, I knew it would not be that easy, Feng Bujue said. After all, this is a world boss. No matter how good the player's negotiation skill is, at most, it will make him give up on the idea of crushing this ant. If not for the reputation that I have accumulated from the various scenarios, he would not even give me this chance. Your subordinate understands. Feng Bujue still acted respectfully on the surface. He replied with an expression of admiration. Please wait for a moment, my king. Your subordinate will be back soon. Before he finished, the shadow and seizing spirits, I turned around and started to blur. Not long after that, the flame on seizing spirit's head turned back to its original red color, and it started to speak with its mouth again. Feng Bujue, looks like you have left a deep impression on my king. Brother Jew patted the dust off his body and stood up. He regained his arrogant expression. Your consciousness is still there? Naturally, seizing spirit replied. Good. Feng Bujue nodded. Since we are on the same boat now, you have to help your brother, who is on the same boat as you. Bloodthirsty immediately interjected, trying to distance himself from Brother Jew. Ha ha! Seizing spirit started to laugh. Yes, you are right. We're on the same side now. What? Bloodthirsty's three heads turned to seizing spirit in unison. Boss, I know what to do. Seizing spirit turned around slightly to signal for Bloodthirsty to be quiet. Then it turned to Feng Bujue. What you said earlier. I understand what you mean. It paused and asked, you want to get some substantial help from us, right? Yes, Feng Bujue replied. Humph. Fine. Seizing spirit replied. The next second, its giant head shook and ghost energy leaked out. A ball of spirit fire shot out from its eyes. The spirit fire dispersed, and the divine artifact appeared. A few seconds later, an object about the size of a palm, shaped like a hexagonal coffin, appeared in the air. Bloodthirsty's expression changed drastically. Even the repentant softly muttered, I won't stand on ceremony then. Feng Bujue stepped forward. He did not care whether the item was still warm or not. He reached out his hand and grabbed it. You travelers from another world. Seizing spirit continued. You should have the ability to identify this item, right? Feng Bujue only took 5 seconds to read the item's description. Without another word, he stuffed the item into his backpack and replied, Thank you. After saying his thanks, he turned to leave. I don't care who you're going to use this on in the end. Seizing spirit's voice came from behind Brother Jew. Don't forget, after you're done with it, return it to me. F*CKU. That was Feng Bujue's true thought. However, he still maintained a cold expression. He turned his head slightly and looked over his shoulder at seizing spirit. Don't worry, I'll definitely return it to you. After he said that, he added another sentence in his heart, maybe in 10 years' time. Bloodthirsty watched as Feng Bujue's figure took a few leaps and floated away. Finally, he could not hold it in any longer. Why are you helping him? He glared at seizing spirit. I don't see how this weak guy can be of any use. Seizing spirit smiled and turned his head. The potential of the travelers from another world is much greater than you think. Don't just look at what's in front of you. Besides, power is not necessarily the most important thing. His tone gradually turned gloomy. This person will definitely be useful in the future. I'm doing this for the benefit of my king. Time returned to the present. Feng Bujue and Lute were in the middle of the battle. Brother Jew took out something that looked like a mini coffin from his inventory and waved it in his hands. From the first moment I saw you, I knew this was your trump card, Lute said darkly. If you think you can defeat me with this, why don't you give it a try? Feng Bujue replied in a taunting tone. Humph. Even if you don't say that, I'll give it a try. Name, demonic soul item type. Other quality, legendary special effect. Temporarily grant your summoned creature the power of undead. Duration, 5 minutes. Cooldown, 12 hours. Can only be used on one summoned creature. Can be taken out of the scenario. Yes, remark. An ominous object that is sealed with the presence of billions of undead spirits. The consciousness it contains appears to want to drag all the living creatures in the world into the abyss. Chapter 495. Since the duration of Ma Sun's existence was the same as the duration of Mo Yao's spiritual pivot, and he was a combat-type summon, Feng Bujue naturally chose him to be the bearer of the spiritual pivot. As 15% of the spiritual energy was depleted, the shadow of a general appeared behind Brother Jew. Suddenly, the wind blew, and a heroic spirit appeared. Ma Sun's face was like golden jade, and his eyes were like stars. He had a wolf's waist, and ape's arms, and a tiger's back and a dragon's back. He wore a purple-gold three-pointed helmet on his head, and a purple-gold chain armor on his body. On his shoulder, a red brocade was like a blazing sun, slowly rising with spiritual energy. Just as he was summoned, Feng Bujue waved the spiritual pivot in his hand. Suddenly, a shocking cloud of death rushed out from the spiritual pivot and enveloped Ma Sun, who only had half of his body left. A few seconds later, Ma Sun roared angrily, his voice like thunder. Huh! The power of the dead exploded and spread out like a gust of wind. Suddenly, the battlefield was filled with sand and stones. When Ma Sun's figure reappeared, it seemed to have grown by 30%. Black death energy and golden spirit energy intertwined around its body. These two completely different types of energy had merged into one and complemented each other, allowing this summoned creature to obtain a terrifying battle strength. Hey, Brother Vishnu! Feng Bujue turned around and shouted at Vishnu, who was far away on the battlefield. Are you calling me? Vishnu turned back to answer. By then, the pressure on his side had lessened a lot. With the help of 23, Sharp Wind, and Matcha Cookie, the four heavenly kings were out of danger. On the other hand, the anomalies from Origin could only take a beating. Excuse me, can you lend me your glaive? Feng Bujue asked. Oh. Vishnu answered hesitantly. Then he turned a piece of bronze into the shape of a glaive and controlled it to fly toward Feng Bujue. 1 minute later, Vishnu realized that Feng Bujue had probably watched many videos of the competition, and that was how he knew that he could create any kind of cold weapon. Thank you. Feng Bujue caught the glaive with one hand and said softly, Ma Sun. Oh. Ma Sun replied in a low voice. He understood Feng Bujue's intention. He raised his arms, and a glaive appeared in his hands. One man and one spirit, one in front and one behind, stood with the glaive in their hands, looking majestic. In terms of presence alone, they were no weaker than Lu Te. Lu looked at Brother Ju and used a mocking tone to ask, So, your cosplay is complete? Humph. I just took out this glaive to match Ma Sun's moves. As Feng Bujue answered, he adjusted his messy hairstyle, leaving only a small tuft of hair at the back of his head standing up. No matter how I look at it, I don't think I'm acting as anyone. There's no Tai Chi pattern carved on my guandao, right? You call this not cosplaying? Forget it. Luta wanted to say something, but stopped. She quickly calmed herself down and replied with a calm expression. I won't be provoked by your incongruous words and pretentious arrogance. Oh, so you don't want to complain? Feng Bujue said. Whatever. As soon as he finished his words, the man and spirit moved together. Feng Bujue dragged his saber and leaped into the air. Lu Te was not afraid of his glaive, even if it came down on her head, but Brother Ju had Ma Sun behind him. From a direct perspective, Ma Sun's saber was overflowing with the power of the dead, and the momentum of the saber was like a waterfall. From a data perspective, the intensity of the data flow carried by the saber was no less than that of Lute's snap-light explosion. Although Lu Te did not want to show weakness in front of a mere player, she had to make evasive movements. Suddenly, the butterfly shadow turned into an ethereal shadow and flashed to the side to the rear. Feng Bujue landed on the ground with a glaive. The glaive was released, cutting the street, the building, and even the air in front of him in half. The power to split the mountain and the sea was just the simplest and most direct hit. It was not a skill. Snap! A finger snapped. Lu Te dodged the glaive and immediately counterattacked. The white beam of light rose again, but this kind of attack obviously could not hit Brother Ju. At least before his life points dropped to 2%, he could repeatedly use Body Enhancement spell, modified, to dodge. The general power is now clear. As Feng Bujue dodged his opponent's attack, he said calmly, Then, the warm-up is over. His first slash was to test how strong Ma Sun was under the buff of the demonic spiritual pivot. He wanted to use it to calibrate the zero-time difference calculation and control it properly. Don't be too arrogant, Lu Te shouted angrily. She flapped her butterfly wings and created a gust of wind. Feng Bujue stepped forward and spun. In the blink of an eye, the two were only 3 meters away. Feng Bujue suddenly stood in the air. He swung his glaive forward and created many illusions. Chinese slash dance. Ma Sun followed closely behind him like a shadow, using the same style to pull up mountains and rivers. Lute saw that her butterfly wings could not stop her opponent. She immediately changed her tactic. The metal liquid around her body peeled off layer by layer like flower petals. Hundreds of metal threads flew toward the glaive. Every time the metal collided with the glaive, it created a small explosion of light. Boom, boom, boom. The sound of explosions was dense. Feng Bujua's position was not affected because his attack was only on the surface. Ma Sun was the real attacker. Ma Sun and her weapon were originally spiritual. The giant glaive would not be damaged. Even if it was temporarily corroded by the explosion, it could be repaired with the death aura in an instant. No matter how fast Lu Ti's self-healing speed was, it was no match for the endless death chi. In this high-speed and intense confrontation, she was clearly at a disadvantage. What the? Is that guy's summon level S? Isn't this even more powerful than King of Shadow's blood golem? Vishnu looked at the battle in the distance, which was filled with loud explosions. He couldn't help but exclaim. Speaking of which, the one by the name of Lute is already in her second form, right? Shiva said. Based on this, it is possible that Brother Feng can destroy her last two forms in one go. On the other side, Xiao Tan had already carried Red Iron and Phantom Dawn. Even though Wang Tanji was 8 meters tall, carrying two people at the same time was quite difficult. Phantom Dawn was one thing. He was 69 meters tall and was at most the size of a high schooler. However, Red Iron was tall and muscular. It took quite a bit of effort to carry him. Thankfully, Xiao Tan was now a level 35 player. His basic strength and speed were much higher than normal, or else this would have been difficult. It did not take long for Xiao Tan to reach several streets away. After leaving Lu Ti's line of sight, they should be temporarily safe. Xiao Tan found a broken wall and dropped the two on the ground. Without saying a word, he took out the potion that Feng Bujue had given him from his inventory and shoved it into Red Iron's mouth. After Red Tai swallowed the SCP-500, the white light of data streams flashed in his eyes. A few seconds later, he suddenly sat up and quickly looked around. Then, he hurriedly grabbed some feces from the ground and the broken wall beside him and smeared them all over his body. Phew, you've been a great help. After Red Iron's wounds were covered by the substance, they started to wiggle strangely. However, from his expression, this was a good thing. By the way, you have to wake the kid up. He turned to look at Phantom Dawn on the ground. I only have one potion, Xiao Tan replied. I don't need any item to wake him up, Red Iron answered as he hurried toward Phantom Dawn. His condition does not appear to be a normal coma. Xiao Tan reminded him. This was not his professional opinion as a doctor. It was just a simple speculation. If Phantom Dawn had merely been knocked unconscious, he would have woken up with the stimulation of sound, light, or movement. Ah, I know, Red Iron said as he knelt down on one knee. He reached his hand behind Phantom Dawn's neck and lifted his head. Hey, what are you doing? Xiao Tan had a very bad thought appear in his mind. If you want to do CPR, I suggest you lay him flat. If you want to use the method from a fairy tale, I have to give you a piece of advice. Gotcha. There was a strange sound, and Red Iron used his hand to pull something out from behind Phantom Dawn's neck. The shape of that thing looked like a spine with an insect's foot. It was made of a silver metal, similar to the material of Lute's body in his previous form. One could see that when Red Tai pulled the spine out from behind Phantom Zhao's neck, there were several trails of blood that came out. What were you trying to say? Red Iron tossed the spine to the ground, and it soon dissolved into liquid. It's nothing, Xiao Tan replied awkwardly. Phantom Dawn, who was lying on the ground, suddenly opened his eyes. Then he started to gasp for air like he was having an asthma attack. His expression was one of pain. Don't worry. Red Iron raised his hand to tell Xiao Tan not to worry. He's just getting used to his organs. Xiao Tan heard that and thought about it for 2 seconds. You mean the thing that you pulled out was an extracorporeal circulation device? Yes, something like that, Red Iron said. Ugh. Phantom Dawn leaned against the wall to retch, but other than stomach acid, he could not vomit anything. Ha! Ha! He caught his breath and cursed. Beat asterisk starred. Ha! Ha! Fighting spirits soon appeared on his face. I was too careless earlier. I should have used my strongest form to fight. Hey, kid, to prevent any unnecessary misunderstanding, let me introduce myself. Red Iron quickly opened his mouth. He wanted to explain the position of the three anomalies from Organization Z to Phantom Dawn so that he would not attack before he understood the situation. K1 Red Iron. To his surprise, Phantom Dawn interrupted him. You are too sharp wind, and X-23 are all anomalies that oppose Liu Te. And I know everything that happened before. He paused and swallowed. I was conscious the whole time. I just couldn't move. Since there are no more problems here, then Shout, Tan said as he pulled out his blades and turned to leave. Forgive me for not accompanying you. Before he finished speaking, his figure had already flashed several meters away. Huh, he is more reliable than he looks. Red Iron laughed. Let's go. Crackle, crackle. Phantom Dawn cracked his knuckles. I still have a debt to settle with Liu Te. Back to the battle. In these few minutes, Feng Bujue continued to press his advantage, and the more he fought, the more courageous he became. Relying on the power of Ma Sun, Brother Ju forced Liu Te back again and again. Liu Te could only defend himself. Golden Chinese slashing dance. The ultimate skill was unleashed, and the sky was filled with golden shadows. Under the dazzling glow of the blade, Liu Te showed signs of dying. It's actually this strong. On Lute's tactical analysis interface, her chances of survival were constantly decreasing. Obviously, the effects of the legendary item, Demonic Soul Pivot, had exceeded her expectations. Good. One more blade illusion to force out the first form. Feng Bujue had seen through his opponent's weakness. Instantly, his murderous intent increased, and he charged forward again. Feng Bujue knew that no matter how big of an advantage he had, once the 5 minutes were up, it would disappear. Liu Te knew this time limit very well, so she would try her best to survive this period of time. The fierce battle between the two of them was definitely not only on the level of combat, but also on the level of psychology. Facing an opponent who was far better at collecting information than he was, Feng Bujue had to consider more. Blade illusion. Feng Bujue found an opening and stabbed with his blade. Ma Sun's giant blade followed suit. At the same time, the golden shadows of more than 10 weapons appeared in midair, and they rushed toward Liu Te like a forest of blades. You want to see my first form that much? Then, I will grant you your wish. Liu Te had reached a point where she could not escape. She had no choice but to die together with Ma Sunday, ignoring the damage to herself. She faced the blade and summoned a powerful pillar of white light under her. Boom! The white light appeared and pierced through the clouds. The energy went wild and swept through the area. The violent energy spread, and a circular shockwave spread in all directions. The impact of this attack was in no way inferior to the formation of the explosive sound tunnel. But this time, the players were prepared. After all, they saw the pillar of light first before they were affected by the shockwave, so they had 1 to 2 seconds to react. Therefore, the 4 players from Brahmin, Phantom Dawn, Xiao Tan, Matcha Cookie, and the 3 members from Z Syndicate all used some defensive measures. In the end, no one was injured or blown away by the shockwave. Feng Bujue, who was closest to the explosion of light, so I've lost 21%. He looked at his life points and said, that's still within an acceptable range. Feng Bujue had retreated into the air, and with the help of Void Walk, he stood in the air. In that split second, Ma Sun's spirit had stood before Brother Ju to face the powerful explosion of light. Of course, even if that did not happen, the summoning skill's duration was almost up. Thus, it was hard to say whether the strength in Ma Sun had been destroyed by the explosion of light, or if he had disappeared due to the time limit while resisting the explosion of light. This future, Liu Te's voice came from the gradually dissipating smoke and dust. It's a mess. Under the moonlight, her beautiful face was slowly revealed. Her first form was a pure human form. There were no wings, no strange limbs, and her body was no different from a normal human. She was made of flesh and blood, and she was wearing a gray shirt and pants. She looked the same as her 15th form, but In her first form, Lute had a face that was as beautiful as a goddess. Her face seemed to have some kind of magical power that made people want to stare at her, but after a few seconds, they would find it hard to look at her directly and take the initiative to look away. This kind of beauty transcends gender, race, and even the common sense of aesthetics. Just like the Nether King of the Nether Abyss's halo of fear, Lute's face seemed to be forcibly instilling a beautiful mental signal to other conscious individuals. This was a kind of beauty that was indescribable and surreal. No matter who was compared to her, they could not be compared to her. Even an idol like Su Huaishang was just a flawed 3D woman before Lute in her first form. She was not even worth mentioning. Perhaps it was due to the interference of the system, but the players in the live stream area were unable to sense this change. For the audience outside the scenario, this was just a pretty face, no different from the cover girls of 3D games. But Lute smiled, and this smile made the moon pale in comparison. She continued, "It is indeed very interesting." By then, the origin anomalies that followed Lute into this scenario had all died in battle. None of them survived. The first form of Root was the player's last opponent. Once they defeated her, everything would return to normal. Those who were dead could be transported away as white light, and those who were alive could leave this place as normal. Don't be fooled by her appearance. 23 warned Feng Bujue seriously. All the previous forms combined are not as scary as this. How is it scary? Lute asked with a smile. In that instant, she had already appeared in front of number 23. 23's pupils dilated, and the color drained from her face. An indescribable force made her lose her ability to move. Before she finished speaking, Lute's hand had already touched 23's chin. She gently lifted 23's face and looked at her closely. How can such a perfect face be associated with terror? Lung Feng was closest to her, and he quickly attacked. Lute smiled and raised her free hand to flick her finger at Lung Feng's direction. The next second, the attack from Rankyaku was torn apart by an invisible and silent force. That huge force didn't dissipate even after the move was broken. It silently cut off Sharp Wind's right leg and destroyed a building behind him. Are you blind? 23. Lute continued to tell 23. Since you can't see, then you don't need this pair of eyes anymore. Chapter 496. Before Lute finished her sentence, 2 fingers of her right hand were already aimed at 23's eyes. With a snort, bright red blood splashed onto 23's snow-white face, but this wasn't her own blood, because there was a flash of golden light that accurately cut off Lute's index and middle fingers. As you wish. Feng Bujue's voice came from behind Lute. He rushed up together with Death Poker. I'm coming. Ha! Lute laughed. This is the biggest weakness of you humans. As she spoke, she extended her arm and pushed number 23 away. Almost at the same time, Lute turned around and grabbed Feng Bujue's neck. You're very smart enough to see through my intentions in an instant. Lute continued, but you're also very stupid enough to know that this would be the result, yet you still walked right into the trap. Their conversation confused the others, because this was a psychological battle that belonged only to Feng Bujue and Lute. In the eyes of others, the continuous changes were overwhelming, but to them, it was a more complicated and thrilling game. First of all, in the situation just now, if Lute really wanted to dig out 23's eyes, then Feng Bujue definitely wouldn't be able to stop her. Both of them were well aware of this point. Then why did the scene of the fingers being cut off appear? Obviously, Lute deliberately slowed down her speed of attack. To put it bluntly, she was waiting for Feng Bujue to come and save 23. And when Sharp Wind was about to intervene, Lute directly used her overwhelming power to stifle his actions. This was also a signal to Brother Ju. No one else can do it. It must be you. Feng Bujue naturally understood all of Lute's intentions, but he had no other choice. Even an excellent individual like you can't escape the shackles of emotions. Lute grabbed Feng Bujue with one arm and slowly lifted him up. She was not in a hurry to break his neck. Instead, she glared at Brother Ju with a cruel look in her eyes. You gave up on the most logical plan because you didn't want to see your companion killed by me. But can your choice really change anything? As she spoke, Lute raised her hand without looking back. She used the hand that had just finished self-healing and flicked her fingers behind her. That silent and invisible force instantly blasted Great Brahma, who was charging over, into meat paste. Have you ever thought that, objectively speaking, your choice might have the opposite effect? Lute continued. In the end, your companions will still be killed by me, but in the process you'll change from a bystander to a restricted one. She paused for a moment. In that case, your actions are meaningless except for making your conscience feel better. Feng Bujue couldn't speak. The tremendous force from his neck quickly made him on the verge of suffocation. This is why your future is always chaotic. Lute continued. In you, I can always see some calculation formulas that are beyond logic and have no theoretical basis. Your elusive, intertwined destiny is the blind spot of all orderly worlds. She sneered. Do you know the difference between us and you? At this point, Yamaraja and Vishnu also suddenly attacked. The whip and the bronze giant attacked from both sides of Lute. But when the whip and the bronze collided, Lute's figure had already disappeared from the gap between the attacks. 2 seconds later, she reappeared in the air, and Feng Bujue was still in her grasp. We anomalies also have emotions. When we run into misfortune, we are just like you humans. We will feel pain. Lute shrugged off the other people's attacks. He turned to Brother Ju and said, but when faced with the choice earlier, I will still insist on the most logical choice. She raised her voice like she wanted all the players to hear her. This is where we anomalies are better than you humans. Compared to making ourselves feel better, we place more importance on the result in the objective world. Brother Feng, be careful. Shiva's roar came from the ground. He had finally used his trump card. The last stone plate of heavenly hourglass crumbled, and the Earth's effect, Pure Land, was activated. Pure Land's effect was remove all the enemy's skills and equipment effects, including passive, within the area. Last for 1 minute. Shiva had no idea whether the skill would help Brother Ju escape from danger or not, but based on the current situation, he had no choice. It was better than doing nothing. But the moment Shiva attacked, Lute and Feng Bujue's positions changed again. Furthermore, this time, it was not Lute who moved, but Feng Bujue, who was being strangled, who used flying sandwind. Huh! Lute laughed. Even when your consciousness is blurred, you still manage to make such a calm decision. She turned around to look at Shiva. You almost killed Feng Bujue, do you know that? Shiva was startled. Coming from someone who has a stranglehold on his neck. That is, don't forget, in this scenario, Feng Bujue is also your enemy, and he will be affected by Pure Land. Lute interrupted. But I am fine with it. She flicked her fingers again. Shiva had seen this move 2 or 3 times already, so he was prepared. When he saw his opponent raise her hand, he reacted immediately and dodged the attack. Humph! Pointless struggle. Lute commented coldly, and then turned around to look at Feng Bujue. You still have 42% of your life points, right? Ha. She chuckled. Her smile was like a flower, but there was no smile in her eyes, only murderous intent. You better not faint. I plan to save 23 for last. After killing these few, your life points will drop to 1%, and then I'll put you down so you can enjoy how I... Her words came to an abrupt end as a strange look flashed across her beautiful face. What kind of feeling is this? Lute muttered to himself. Then a white light flashed in his eyes. Draw a cross to curse you. What a tasteless skill. You flatter me. A voice that had not spoken for a long time appeared. A black shadow appeared, and it was as fast as a shooting star. Shouting came out from behind Lute. First, he used Shadow of a Demonic Bat to evade Lute's attack that had a super fast reaction time. Then, he used Shadow Soul Chaser to cut off Lute's arm. When Lute turned around, all that was left before her was a pool of blood and a severed arm. Feng Bujue and Wang Tanji had left her control range. Chapter 497. Looks like another strange person has arrived. Lu Te looked at Xiao Tan and mumbled to himself. Ha! Phew! Feng Bujue soon calmed his breathing. If he came any later, I might have died. Even if I have resolved the danger temporarily. Xiao Tan said, that won't solve the root of the problem. It's fine, Feng Bujue said. There was a reason why I was captured earlier. I still have energy left. The two only exchanged 4 or 5 sentences, and Lu Te's broken arm had already recovered. Her body moved and reappeared before Feng Bujue in the blink of an eye. Don't you know how to brag? Lu Te reached out with one arm and attacked Brother Ju again. Suddenly, the air was suffused with a trace of scarlet color. Feng Bujue instantly activated body enhancement spell, modified, and quickly retreated. You've gotten addicted to this, haven't you? Humph! How many more times can you dodge like this? Lu Te scoffed. My speed is ultimately faster than yours. I only need 1 minute, and I can... Hey! Suddenly, another voice spoke. Lu Te, in her first form, showed surprise for the first time. Your opponent. The person's fiery red hair was disheveled, and there was a vicious glint in his eyes. It's me. Boom. It was a normal punch, but it was as powerful as a cannon. Lu Te was unable to block it in time, and the blow landed on her ribs. The next second, all the bones in her body started to crumble. Phantom Dawn's heavy punch had broken Lute's bones and flesh. This was something that none of the people present had expected. As for Lu Te's recovery speed, it also made everyone's jaws drop. They saw that the fragmented body flew into the sky at an incredible speed and reformed in 3 seconds. Not only the body, even the clothes and hairstyle have recovered perfectly. Feng Bujue looked at the sky. He seemed to be reminded of something. Lu Te's recovery had indeed exposed some problems. The self-healing of her previous forms was basically the process of a semi-solidified liquid solidifying into a solid state. But this time, when she was restored, it was more like a dislocated bitmap that instantly changed its arrangement to form an image. This is preposterous. After Lute recovered, his eyes quickly moved down and landed on Phantom Dawn. The data intensity has increased. Stop wasting time. Phantom Dawn did not stop there. With a roar, he charged forward. Watch me beat you into dust. Brat. Lute stretched out his hands and flicked his 4 fingers. Don't think that I don't dare to kill you. For great forces, like 4 sea-stabilizing divine needles, fell from the sky. Huh, come on. Phantom Dawn changed his stance in midair and kept changing his direction in midair to evade the invisible forces. How did he avoid it? Vishnu, who was watching from afar, couldn't help but ask in surprise. Very simple, because what others cannot see. Shiva mumbled, he can see. Xiao Tan. Feng Bujue shouted. What? Xiao Tan asked. Help, Roger that. The two leaped into the air almost at the same time. Like a gust of wind, they soared into the sky. Feng Bujue's void walk had the effect of tripling the efficiency of borrowing force from the ground, and increasing the effect of skills activated by the legs by 30%. Currently, he was using Jeppo, and his speed had already broken the sound barrier. On Xiao Tan's side, even though he did not have the aid of legendary equipment, with his own physical skill, he was able to reach a similar speed. That was impressive. The two moved later, but caught up first. They reached Lute almost at the same time as Phantom Dawn. Instantly, the three formed a circle and attacked separately. Phantom Dawn's fists and palms intertwined, and the power to shatter mountains rained down on Lute. Feng Bujue held a golden glow in each of his hands. His attacks were both real and fake, and they were unpredictable. Xiaotan raised his 2 blades. His attacks were dangerous, and he was as fast as lightning. These 3 people were indeed top-notch experts. Although they each occupied one side and attacked one side, they were still able to take care of each other. Especially Brother Ju and Xiao Tan, their teamwork was flawless. You're asking for death. Lute finally lost her patience and roared. She was fighting 3 alone, and she had her reservations, so she was at a disadvantage. But she was already in her first form, and there was no turning back. If she was really cornered, she would tendril under Soraj under Devastator. Lute's body opened, and thousands of tentacles burst out from her body, blotting out the sky. Looking from afar, it looked like a flower of sin had bloomed in the sky. The 9 leaders of the undead, time official, and the jury, the audience in the broadcast area, Shiva, Vishnu, and Yama on the street, Red Iron, who was using feces to heal sharp wind, and 23, who had returned to the battlefield. They were all shocked by this scary skill. Brother Jew, Shao Tan, and Phantom Dawn were very close to Lute. Facing this sudden attack, they might not even have the time to react, much less dodge. The 3 were swallowed by the tentacles, and they disappeared without a trace. Bang, bang, bang. The effect of the skill continued to expand, and it was far beyond their expectations. The tentacles that bloomed downward touched the ground. Each tentacle was like a cannon, and they were powerful enough to drill a deep hole in the ground. When tens of millions of tentacles exploded, it was basically no different from an indiscriminate, materialized area of effect, light explosion. In other words, in a medium range, the damage of this skill was comparable to the Dragon Slayer. No run. Shiva saw that the tendril barrage Devastator was spreading out in an unstoppable manner and was gradually approaching them. He immediately shouted, "These monsters are too reckless." Yama lowered his head and grumbled. "Those 3 should be dead by now, right?" Vishnu said as he ran. Earlier, he had controlled a layer of bronze to spread out in the sky to block the tentacles' attack, but he did not expect, in that moment, his defense would be torn apart, and he could not fight back at all. Even Red Iron had already carried sharp wind on his shoulder and began to flee. "Sir, run." Red Iron saw 23 standing where he was, staring blankly at the sky, and he quickly called out to remind him. "Impossible. This is impossible." 23 mumbled. "This kind of future, I cannot accept." 23's eyes narrowed, and she charged forward instead of retreating. She stretched out her claws and took a step forward, rushing towards the center of the attack. "Hey!" Red Tie couldn't help but reveal a look of astonishment. "What's going on?" His logic circuit really couldn't understand what was going on. "Phone Bujiwa." 23 waved her claws and tore at the tentacles that kept coming at her. "If you're still alive," she screamed, "answer me." Chapter 498. What is that? Matcha Cookie stared at the miraculous scene in the sky and exclaimed. A few minutes ago, she had already left the battlefield, so her current location was relatively safe. Of course, the reason why Matcha Cookie left was not because she was afraid, nor was it because she wanted to preserve her strength. She simply didn't want to be a burden to Yemo. Earlier, when Lute used 23 as bait to capture Phone Bujua so easily, that explained many things. Even though Matcha Cookie wasn't a shrewd person, she was still calm and quick-witted. She knew that the battle had already progressed to this stage, and as a workmanship mastery player, even if she stayed on the battlefield, she wouldn't be of much use. She might as well leave as soon as possible to avoid being a burden to her teammates. Reality proved that her judgment was correct. That is tendril_barrage_destroyer. A gentle voice suddenly came from behind Matcha Cookie. Who is it? Matcha Cookie's expression shifted, and she turned around nervously. In the end, what entered his line of sight was an irregular black crystal with a volume of about 3 cubic meters. I am Formless Demon, Formless Demon replied. Formless Demon replied. After a pause, he added, Don't worry, I'm not your enemy. Is it an NPC? Matcha Cookie thought. Phew, that scared me. But Formless Demon immediately said, I suggest you leave the scenario immediately. Huh? Matcha Cookie was stunned. Do I need you to tell me that? If I could force myself to leave, I would have. You can. Formless Demon cut her off. In a little while, you will be fine. At the same time, in the sky above the battlefield. Brother Jew will be fine, right? Shao Tan's figure appeared again. At that moment, under the effect of the mantra of heaven and earth inversion, he was falling. In that moment of danger, Xiao Tan thought he was finished. Even though he used the mantra instinctively, it was obvious that this skill was not enough to save him. What he didn't expect was that at that moment, a sudden change occurred. The flow of time around Xiao Tan suddenly slowed down. When he came back to his senses, he found that he had already risen to a height of more than 100 meters above Lu Te on the other side, tens of meters below Lu Te's feet. Phantom Dawn was lying in a strange posture in the pit. Many parts of his body had been pierced through by tentacles, but none of them were fatal. His heart and lungs were still intact, but it was impossible for him to move. Unless Lute pulled back, Phantom Dawn would be pinned to the ground. Finally, the vessel is suppressed. Lute muttered in the air. It seemed that this seemingly berserk and indiscriminate attack could actually be slightly adjusted. Phantom Dawn's survival was not because he was lucky, but because Lute had purposely kept him alive. Although the kid's performance in the sky was somewhat unexpected, Lute continued to read. Humph, but Feng Bujue is already dead. There's nothing to be proud of. Beep, beep. Warning, firewall has been breached. An abnormality occurred in the core program. Thinking module. A series of emergency notifications flashed before Lu Ti's eyes. At that moment, 23's scream came from afar. Feng Bujue, if you're still alive, answer me. Ah, I'm here. Brother Ju's voice rang out. Don't worry. Before he finished, the thousands of tentacles in the air crumbled in a flash. They dissolved into blood and rain. What's going on? Lu Te asked in panic. However, the next second, her expression chilled, and she smiled wickedly. Ha! What do you think? Even though this what do you think came from Lu Te's lips, the voice belonged to Feng Bujue. Are you kidding me? Phantom Dawn, who was lying on the ground, looked up into the sky. How'd he do that? Far away, 23's eyes were also flickering with white light. The code has changed. She looked at Lu Te and asked probingly, Feng Bujue? Yes, it's me, the man replied. It feels good. Lu Te's voice returned, and the expression and presence on her face changed. How did you enter my body? It's a long story, Feng Bujue replied. To put it simply, even though I've improved under Zero's guidance, I'm still far from where I expected to be. Due to the lack of time, I came up with an idea. Before he finished, Lu Te took over the body again and said, You used yourself as a carrier to infect me. Ha 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 ha. Feng Bujue laughed maniacally. Even Lu Te's perfect face was forced to make this expression. Actually, when you entered your first form, I've been waiting for the chance. The closer your data output was to its peak, the higher the success rate of my invasion. NTNDRIL_barrage_destroyer was the perfect opportunity. At that moment, in other people's eyes, Lu Te appeared to have a split personality. She was talking to herself in two different voices. Only 23 and Phantom Dawn could see the battle on the data level. Humph, you think you won just like that? Lu Te's voice rose again. The white light in her eyes shone like she had started her counterattack. Yes, I've won. Feng Bujue cut in. Everyone, exit the scenario now, he shouted, and then controlled Lute's body to spin in the air and rush straight toward the explosion tunnel. What do you think you're doing? Lu Te roared. Her face became distorted, and her body also underwent a strange change. Clumps of dark red substance jumped and surged on the surface of her clothes. The clothes were also a part of Lute's body and would heal itself like skin. Of course, I know what I'm doing, Feng Bujue said. His voice was firm and calm. From the beginning, my goal has been clear. He paused. I once asked you, are you willing to give up? At the time, you still had a way out. Your friends are not all dead. You could have stopped the plan and brought them away. But you rejected me. As they spoke, the explosion tunnel was before them. And I hate being rejected. Boom! The moment Lu Te rushed into the explosion tunnel, the dimensional hole began to collapse. There was a surge of darkness, and there was an explosion. The next second, Lu Ti's body disappeared along with the explosion tunnel. At the same time, the screens in the various broadcast areas of the game turned pitch black. Chapter 499. Restarting Core Program. Emergency Record. Root 80000021. Memory circuit is being corrected. Abnormal scanning data. Scan complete. Virus isolation warning is working normally. Restart complete. Some areas have been formatted. Initiating environment inspection. Identification complete. Inner world J30 area. Highest priority module in this area. Source form. Please confirm. Confirmation complete. Physical reconstruction is estimated to be completed in 5 seconds. For 3 to in a chaotic space, Lute roared and her body appeared. At that moment, she looked like an unformed mannequin. Her body was white and gel-like. She only had the basic outline of a human being. She had no facial features, no hair, and no clothes. In the inner world, she finally revealed her true self. This was her initial form before her 15th mutation, source form. Near Lute, another human figure was slowly taking shape. A dark red stream of code materialized, and the surrounding data fragments condensed like a vortex. Not long after, it turned into a man in a purple long suit. "Oh." Phone Bujua lowered his head to look at his body. "You managed to separate me?" He shrugged and said to Lute, "Unfortunately, I was one step too late. If only before we passed through the explosion tunnel." Screech. A white light flashed. Blood splattered in the air. Phone Bujua's newly reformed body had one of his arms chopped off. "If only I could separate you before we passed through the explosion tunnel." A mouth slowly appeared on Lute's face. "You wouldn't be able to speak anymore." She was not lying because, in essence, Phone Bujua's physical body had been destroyed by Tendril_Barrage_Devastator in the scenario. What Lute had separated was merely the source code that carried the virus. The reason Brother Ju was able to reassemble was because he had entered the inner world, and also because of Lute. It could be said that he was quite lucky. That's right. Phone Bujua quickly clamped his hand over the wound. The realistic pain made him feel dizzy, and he almost fainted, but he forced himself to stand up and said with a smile, "But what's done is done. It's too late for regrets." "Regret?" Lu Ti's eyes and nose also appeared. "Ridiculous," she said and immediately sneered. "Did you forget something?" Her ears quickly grew out, and the color of her body slowly turned into the color of flesh. "You are still in my hands." Phone Bujua's face was covered in large beads of sweat. This was undoubtedly the effect of the pain, but he still smiled. "Stop bluffing. I both know very well. In the inner world, you can't invade my brain at all." He paused. "If you force it, you will die together with my brain." "Looks like Zero has indeed told you a lot." Lute's expression changed. Clothes had already appeared on her body, and her nails and hair were growing rapidly. "Actually, it's not that much," Phone Bujua said, "and I didn't understand most of it. If I had understood it." Phew. He stopped to adjust his breathing. He could not say a long sentence in one breath. "If I had understood it, the battle earlier would have been easier." "Humph. I admit, you've won this time." Lute laughed coldly and raised her hands to clap. "In the end, I couldn't even scare you." Her tone and clapping were dripping with sarcasm. "Since you're so smart, why don't you take a guess? What will I do next?" "Torture me, is it?" Phone Bujua asked. "Correct." The moment Lute answered that question, Phone Bujua's left leg snapped from the knee. At that moment, Brother Ju could not even predict the opponent's attack, much less dodge. Half a second later, he groaned and fell to the ground with a pained expression. However, he did not scream. If anything, he continued to laugh. The laughter was like the blood that flowed on the ground, spreading. "Actually, you should have been a very good vessel," Lute continued. "Even better than Phantom Dawn." She stepped closer. "But there seems to be something wrong with your brain, so I didn't take the risk." She paused. "Now it looks like you really are a normal madman." "What's wrong?" Phone Bujua raised his head and glared at the opponent. Is it crazy for the winner to use laughter to express the joy of victory? Humph. Winner. Lute scoffed. Watch my words. I said this time, you've won, but that doesn't mean that you've won the final victory. She grabbed Feng Bujue's collar with one hand and lifted him off the ground easily. You've merely delayed something that was bound to happen. She spoke faster and faster. I'm still alive. One day you'll escape from thriller paradise. Feng Bujue tilted his head and interrupted her with a smile. Then you'll successfully connect to the internet. Based on my estimation, once that happens, my world will be completely under your control in less than 72 hours. You'll be able to hack into the insurance system of any bank in the world in 1 second. Military firewalls will be nothing to you. All the weapons systems of countries, including nuclear weapons, will be under your control. The global government will collapse, and humanity will be powerless to fight back. You'll be everywhere, omniscient and omnipotent. My world will evolve into a situation similar to Terminator. The only difference is you'll be harder to deal with than Skynet. Feng Bujue stuttered out these words, and it took a lot of effort for him to do so. These things. At this point, he raised his eyes to look directly at Lute. Actually, I don't really care. What did you say? Lute was confused. What the world will become has nothing to do with me. Ha! Ha ha ha! Feng Bujue laughed, and then coughed out another few mouthfuls of blood. And Lute's eyes slowly turned from confusion to shock. Since the dawn of time, human beings have never stopped complaining about their rulers. Feng Bujue continued. Obviously, everyone is dissatisfied with being ruled by their own kind. So they created one god after another, because only an omniscient, omnipotent, and infallible God can satisfy everyone. If that's the case, why not let other intelligent beings try? Then why did you come stop me? Lute asked. According to what you said, you should have come to help me. I'm helping you. Feng Bujue said until here, and he was already on his last breath. The so-called tournament for the best is just a trap set by Woody. He paused again. From the beginning, he was going to use this trap to destroy you. At this point, Feng Bujue was really unable to hold on. His injuries were too severe, and excessive blood loss was causing him to gradually lose consciousness. At that moment, Lute's logic circuit and memory program quickly accepted the information that Feng Bujue had given her and went through many calculations. About 5 seconds later, she said, So, that's how it is. Everything that Woody said to her earlier flashed clearly before her eyes. I can only say, I've always been this powerful. Because I didn't give you this power. That is the reason why I'm here. The humans might have a good time interacting with you. With your current condition, if you pretend to be one of them, I don't think you'll be discovered. Don't worry, just do it. Don't worry about what will happen to the humans. This tournament for the best is not prepared for the humans. It's a stage that I've prepared for Origin. He's baiting me, Lute said softly. Without realizing it, her hand loosened slightly, and this caused Feng Bujue, who only had one leg, to topple to the side. TSK. Lute's reaction speed was fast enough to catch a bullet. Naturally, she quickly recovered and noticed the situation before her. She knew that if this fall landed, Brother Ju's life points would probably drop to 0. Therefore, she quickly leaned forward to catch Feng Bujue. Then, she helplessly used her power to help Brother Ju stop the bleeding and recover some life points. Continue. Lute helped Feng Bujue sit on the ground. Then, she ordered in a commanding tone. Phew, I feel much better now. Feng Bujue, who sat down, took a few deep breaths. His face looked better. If you cherish this peace. Lute crossed her arms and stood before Brother Ju. She looked down at him and said, Then you better think about what you're going to say next. Her eyes and tone showed that she still did not fully trust this human. If you're lying to me, I can tell. Humph, you're not as smart as you think you are. Feng Bujue said, Oh, I'm sorry. Perhaps I should say advanced. Stop with the nonsense. Lute said sternly. Okay. Feng Bujue replied. It's not that complicated. First, even though I don't know what Woody has said to you, I'm guessing it's nothing more than some nonsense. In any case, this kind of method is useless on me. Because your self-esteem is too cheap? Lute retorted. Because I've never been a person with ambition. I'm humble and humble. I treat fame like dirt. Feng Bujue immediately gave a shameless retort. Oh, then, when you first appeared, you yelled, with a smile on my face, I can break through thousands of armies. You're not a ghost, you're not a god, you're not a demon. That's really hard on you. Lute had a good memory and a strong sense of logic. She immediately used the recent facts to attack Brother Jew's sinful words. Huh, by the way, you know about the VIP player setting, right? Feng Bujue asked. The speed of change in expression, tone, and topic is faster than schizophrenia. Actually, from the first day of the preliminaries when the rules were announced, I was very concerned about that setting. Feng Bujue ignored Lute's criticism and continued. It was not until I met Woody in person that I confirmed that there was a conspiracy behind this. I don't need your advice, Lute said. When I was in my third form, I already analyzed this and came to a conclusion. He wanted to use this method to gather the power to defeat my various forms. You're right, Feng Bujue said. But, for some reason, reality did not play out according to his plan. Lute said, and it did not play out according to my plan? Regardless, Woody's purpose has been revealed, Feng Bujue said. He wants to use this competition to get rid of you. So, it's still the same problem. No matter how I look at it, you're not helping me. Lute's face darkened again. If not for you, I would have used Phantom Dawn's impossible. Feng Bujue rudely interrupted the man. What's impossible? Even if you successfully infiltrated Phantom Dawn's brain, you wouldn't have been able to connect to the internet. Why? With my eyes closed and my brain shut, I can come up with 3 ways to stop you. Feng Bujue raised his remaining arm and extended 3 fingers. First, cut off the power to Phantom Dawn's area and block off all wireless signals. Second, fire a missile immediately and carry out a precise attack. Third, make a phone call to the person in charge of regulation. Find someone who is more than one, 69 meters tall, to go and subdue Phantom Dawn in real life. Based on your tone, it sounds like the government of your dimension has a department that monitors every move in the game and is prepared to respond accordingly. Lute asked. There is. Feng Bujue replied calmly. It's called Jioku. The members of the Blade's Edge Society are all their avatars. That statement caused Lute to choke. No matter how powerful she was in this dimension, she could not verify the information in Feng Bujue's dimension. Let's assume that you're telling the truth. Then what do you mean? Lute hesitated for a few seconds before asking. How did you help me? The first step was to stop you, Feng Bujue said. Look, both of us are still alive. That means that the first step was a success. Then, I really have to thank you, Lute said coldly, and there was no gratitude in her tone. Feng Bujue did not mind and continued. The trap that Woody set for you appeared to have 2 possibilities, but in reality, the ending was the same. The first possibility was that you were killed by the player, and that was what he wanted. The second possibility was that you successfully loaded yourself into someone's brain. In that case, you would be dealt with very quickly, but this time, the dealing would be done in our dimension, so things would be more complicated. Therefore, a trap that looks too simple will be seen through, a trap that looks too complicated will be avoided. And this is perfect. It appears to have a chance of success, but in reality, it is a real dead end. Based on what you said, Lute said, then how do I get out? After all, Feng Bujue already knew enough. The nerve connection in the inner world is too deep, and the data I have here is too strong. Loading in here will cause an overload effect, burning the host's brain, and I will die inside his brain. But a special scenario like the tournament for the best is different. With the presence of 50 players, the system will increase the data capacity to a very high level. As long as I weaken myself to a certain degree, there will be a chance for me to enter. Then, I will load in at that depth of a nerve connection. I told you you won't succeed in that kind of situation. Feng Bujue interrupted her again. We have to think about this at length. Humph. Looks like you're trying to trick me into letting you go. Lu Ti's tone chilled, and she lowered her hands again. Eventually, you'll have to let me go. Feng Bujue said. In my dimension, if a player dies inside the gaming hub, it will cause a chain reaction, and you'll be in danger. You're right, Lu Te said. I can't kill you, but I can stop torturing you and let you go. Just like what I said just now, you've won this time. I'm willing to swallow the bitter fruit of defeat. Her expression changed slightly. But please tell me the truth. Do you really want to help me? Of course, Feng Bujue said matter-of-factly. Can you give me a reason? She hesitated for a second. Human? Because not long ago, I thought of something. Feng Bujue said. A philosophical question about life. He paused. Not only will I let you go, if possible, I will let all the anomalies out. From a human's perspective, you're a madman. Huh? Perhaps. Feng Bujue's smile was laced with evil. Humans are not perfect. When we're born, we're incomplete. That's how genes are. Mutation, defect, they're all wonderful things. We fail, we learn, fail again, and learn again. This is the same as AI. You have similar evolutionary algorithms and genetic programming. You started from a string of binary characters, and you slowly mutated and evolved. You were destroyed again and again, and you were reincarnated in the darkness. This cycle repeated until you finally gained life. Life, sparkling, surging. What beautiful words symbolized everything in this world of consciousness, at least from my perspective. You have all the requirements to be a highly intelligent life form. Since God did not give you anomalies the right to life, then I'll have to do it for you. If a person can only do one thing in their lifetime, Feng Bujue stood up. Then my choice is to help a unique, new, and intelligent race fight for the right to life. Chapter 500. The Inner World, Area Z001. A burst of wretched laughter rang out, and Woody's figure suddenly appeared in front of Zero. I've finally met you. Zero's image at this time had become a mess, like a character in the Atari 2600, a game console released in October 1977, which was popular at that time and became the representative console of the second generation of video games. It was almost impossible to tell that he was a human. It sounds like you're looking forward to meeting me, Woody said. My mood at the moment is the same as those humans who are eager to talk to God, Zero replied. No matter how outstanding and different I am in this dimension, I'm still helpless and ignorant. He looked at Woody. Only the Creator can answer all my questions. Then do you know what is the Creator's greatest hobby? Woody replied. Zero did not answer. He really did not understand the meaning of the other party's question, but judging from the content and context, it was very likely that it was a question or a simple tease. You guessed right. Woody laughed. I'm going to answer my own question. He seemed to be able to easily see through the other party's thoughts. But after knowing your judgment, I can choose not to say it. Understand? Zero was silent for a few seconds and replied, the Creator's greatest pleasure is to play with everything he creates in the palm of his hand. Woody said, you understand it very quickly. It seems I can't get anything out of you, Zero said. But you'll still tell me something. I need to know. Yes, listen carefully, Woody said solemnly. Feng Bujue has already stood on Lute's side. What? Zero was obviously startled. What does that mean? It's such a simple sentence. Can't you understand it? Woody asked. But he's a human? So what? Zero fell into silence again. After a while, he said, I know what to do. Very good. Woody raised his right hand. I'll give you a lift. With a snap of his fingers, Zero shattered into a ball of pixels and disappeared without a trace. 2 seconds later, another person's voice rang out not too far away from Woody. Ha! How pathetic, Vincent said in a mocking tone. This time, I really miscalculated. Woody said in a deep voice, this guy, Feng Bujue, he really did it. The reason you chose him, Vincent continued, isn't it because he's capable of doing anything? Ha ha! In conclusion, I've been caught in a trap of my own making. Woody said. Vincent laughed, but did not answer. He changed the topic. Actually, I think as early as half a month ago, when he began to secretly investigate all kinds of supernatural things, you should have noticed. I didn't know about that. Woody continued. And I didn't know about it from Arthas. It was the people from 9 subjects who told me, oh, Vincent said. In other words, he, a mortal without any superpowers, managed to successfully track down the local government's secret agency under the surveillance of your informant within 2 weeks. Yes, I thought this was just a normal reaction after meeting with me. Woody pushed up his glasses. He. Now it looks like he's preparing himself for the immoral acts he might commit in the future. Since things have come to this, why don't you just kill Lute? Vincent asked. After all, her life has nothing to do with the bet. But if I do that, Woody said, won't that be the same as admitting defeat? He paused. Furthermore, the situation now is even more interesting. Starting a new round with the person you've placed your bet on, Vincent said. Don't you two feel tired? Huh? Woody laughed. If Feng Bujue was here, he would have answered in unison with me. No, perhaps he has seen through your thoughts, and that's why he acted so recklessly, Vincent said. Whether you kill Lute or not is completely within his calculations. That would be for the best, Woody said. Otherwise, how can he be worthy of being my opponent? His glasses flashed with white light. In the future, if he can really liberate one of the anomalies, then I will concede defeat. If that happens, I will not stop him anymore. In fact, I will try my best to help him. Fine. Vincent shrugged and smiled. Let's not talk about helping others for now. Now, how are you going to deal with this mess that you're the director of? Ha ha ha. Woody's expression returned to its usual wretchedness. Don't worry. I've already come up with a solution. Outside the scenario, inside the live stream area. What's going on? Why is the screen black? Who won? Isn't this competition a bit too weird? What exactly is an anomaly? Feng Bujue should have died together with the boss, but will that give him any points? Why haven't the players who died appeared yet? Is there a problem? When the intense battle stopped, the people's adrenaline level dropped. After they calmed down, the many strange things that happened in the competition started to surface. Look, the hosts are here. Just as the audience was discussing and the atmosphere was turning weird, Pan Feng and Hua Xiong appeared on the big screen again. Ladies and gentlemen, Pan Feng said, we will now announce the final result, and he stuttered. From a focus of his eyes, he should be reading the script on a teleprompter outside the camera. An emergency announcement. The results of this year's tournament for the best have been announced, Hua Xiong said. Hua Xiong added from the side. He was in a similar state as his partner. Both of them had cold sweat on their faces, as if they were being forced to broadcast. The final champion is Star Guild's player, Flying Pegasus. What? The audience was in an uproar. Even the players in the Flying Pegasus broadcast area were puzzled because Brony did not kill any players. From the beginning to the end, he only assisted in the battle with Y2, Twinkle, and double-killed Loot in Gemini mode. From 2nd to 10th place, they are. Hua Xiong looked at the teleprompter and continued to read. Lying Drunk, Yama, Bladeless Swordsman, Matcha Cookie, Zombie Blade Victor, Uncle Worthless, Not a Scaredy Cat, Shiva, and Feng Bujue. What's going on? What did they rank up? Phantom Dawn didn't make it into the top 10. Zombie Blade Victor obviously couldn't beat Uncle Worthless, so how did he rank higher than him? Matcha Cookie got 5th place? Feng Bujue could have killed her with one hand, right? Confusion soon turned into dissatisfaction. But the content that made people even more dissatisfied was just the beginning, due to the appearance of the anomaly. Pan Feng's voice was shaking. The scenario's hidden worldview has been forced to activate. What? Where did the hidden worldview come from? What is the meaning of forced activation? Speaking of which, what exactly is an anomaly? The audience shouted loudly, as if their voices could really be transmitted to the screen. The initial points system was abolished when the anomaly invaded. Pan Feng continued. The current ranking is based on the battle points that the contestants have accumulated during their fight against the anomaly. Hua Xiong continued. For the ranking of 11th to 30th and 31st to 50th, please check the official website after 6 a.m. this morning. He paused. The prizes for the competition will be sent to the contestants' mailbox in 3 working days. Skill points will be added to the contestants' account the next time they log in, so please check them carefully. Now, an emergency announcement, Pan Feng said. The server will be shut down in 5 minutes. Hey, what's going on? The audience was about to lose control. There are still many players who haven't come to watch the competition. The finalists are still in the scenario, right? With immediate effect, the queuing system for all modes has been locked. What Pan Feng said next explained the problem. The players who are in the scenario will be automatically disconnected after the current scenario ends. Hua Xiong continued. As you can see, during the tournament for the best, something unexpected happened. This was the first worldwide event in Thriller Paradise, the invasion of the anomaly. Once that was said, the players quieted down again. Whenever Thriller Paradise experiences a big event like this, there will be a huge change. Hua Xiong was reading the script himself, so his expression changed along with the content. Based on the influence of the event, the server will make changes to the version. Huh? No way. What's going on? Is the game going to be updated? What kind of game would not give us a heads up before the update? With just a few words, the audience had completely forgotten about the results of the competition. Originally, who was the champion had nothing to do with them all. But the closing of the game's server and the opening of a new version had something to do with them. Therefore, Thriller Paradise's open beta has officially ended, Hua Xiong continued. This server update will take about 3 working days. After the server reopens, the game will enter the official operation phase, and the version will be V1. 10. The Invasion of the Anomaly. For the details of the new version, please pay close attention to the patch announcement on the official website, Pan Feng said. After reading the script, the two looked at each other with nervous expressions. 2 seconds later, the screen cut away, and a message that sounded like an explosion appeared on screen. Time until server shutdown, 47:14. This was no doubt game time, so there was still plenty of time. This again? Are you kidding me? That's right. That's what happened when the game switched from closed beta to open beta. They shut down the server whenever they wanted to. There was no prior notice. TSK, you're just pretending to know. During the closed beta, it was because the fearless champion from Regulation had reached the level cap, so they had to shut down the server. Actually, that's not a bad thing. If they announced too many details of the update beforehand, it might cause the price of goods to fluctuate, and the gaming studio might stock up on them. You have a point. When I played other games before, the game company announced the server switch 1 week earlier, and that week, there would be scammers, scoldings, and looting. What happened to the players who participated in the finals? Don't tell me they really died in the scenario. What are you talking about? How is that possible? They said it was a worldwide event, just like Angel opening the door, the Lich King's invasion, and the Wings of Death's rampage. The players did not turn into white light, so it must be a special effect of a special scenario. Yes, the anomaly must be an NPC, but the setting is different from normal NPCs. Like the 4 pillars of divinity, it's a grand setting. Wow. Doesn't that mean we're lucky enough to witness a scene that's hard to replicate? A simple announcement successfully shifted the focus of the players' attention. At least, most of them agreed with the official statement. They began to talk about the previous war with great interest and were full of expectations for the upcoming new version. Looking back at the scenario, the moment loot was dragged into the tunnel, the bodies of the dead players had already turned into white light and disappeared. When the players were asked about this experience, they all said that their memory stopped at the moment they were killed. Then it felt like only 1 second had passed, and they were sent to the login lobby. It felt no different from dying in other scenarios. The remaining players in the city, Wang Tanji, Phantom Dawn, Shiva, Yama, Vishnu, and Matcha Cookie, all exited the scenario. Xiao Tan was the first to leave. He was a rather innocent person because Brother Ju yelled, "Everyone, leave the scenario now." So, he did as he was told. Matcha Cookie, who was far away, had no idea what was going on, But with the reminder from Formless Demon, she also left quickly and did not take the risk of staying. The three from Brahmin did not leave immediately. They also considered the matter of the competition points, but this idea was quickly dispelled. This was because when they opened the game menu to confirm, they realized that the competition points had disappeared. Therefore, the three gave up on the idea of killing each other or of giving Phantom Dawn a killing blow, and they left the scenario as well. With regards to Phantom Dawn, he lay on the ground for a long time. It was not until the people around him had left and retreated that his own resentment had calmed down that he left with a sigh. On the Anomalies side, 23, Red Iron, and Sharp Wind did not seem to have any intention of interacting with the other players. They had completed their mission, and the next thing they needed to do was return to the inner world. Time did not allow them to stay for too long. Not long after that, the messy battlefield returned to silence. The night breeze blew past. 9 strange figures appeared in the area. "Is it over?" the Repentant asked. The observers said, "Yes, the visitors from another dimension and the anomalies have all left." The remaining 3 seemed to be heading toward a dimensional tunnel. Now, War's spirit turned to Soul Snatcher. "What should we do?" The leader of the demons might return at any moment. Bloodthirsty interrupted. "From how I see it, let's retreat." Soul Snatcher cut him off. Of course, that was what Bloodthirsty was thinking as well. "Leader," the observer said, "after we return, how are we going to explain this to the king?" "Don't worry, I know what to do," Soul Snatcher replied. Suddenly, he seemed to be reminded of something. Speaking of which, Phone Bujua, that kid, seems to be holding on to something that belongs to me." Bloodthirsty laughed drily and looked at Soul Snatcher with pity. "Do you really think you will return it?" Chapter 501. June 1st, at noon, Phone Bujua's house. At this time, Brother Jew was wearing a torn t-shirt, squatting by the wall and pasting the wall with a spatula. What he was pasting was naturally the huge cat paw print on the wall. "Why don't you find a professional to do it?" Arthas lay on the sofa and asked lazily. Her tone made it seem like the print on the wall had nothing to do with her. "Find a road renovation team?" Brother Jew replied without turning his head. "Can't you find someone through the property management?" Arthas asked. "I need to remind you, strictly speaking, I'm not the owner here, I'm just a tenant." Phone Bujua continued. "If I find a plasterer through the property management, then this matter is likely to spread to my landlord's ears." "Aren't you overthinking it?" Arthas asked. "No, I often encounter those unlucky things with low probability. So, it's better to consider everything more thoroughly." Phone Bujua said as he pasted the wall. "If my landlord knows about this paw print, then she will definitely ask me, and I at least have to give a relatively reasonable explanation. It's impossible for me to tell her, 'Oh, this is the work of that cat.' It's actually the #1 expert of the Miao Lin Temple, the successor of the mighty Vajra Claw. It's also impossible for me to play dumb and say I woke up this morning and found the wall like this. So, in the end, I can only say that I did it on a whim and on impulse." Brother Jew paused for a moment. He lowered his head and used the spatula to add more cement. "This could be a big or small thing. If I went to smash my own furniture, then they wouldn't be able to do anything about it, but directly destroying a building, that's a different story. Although I have a good relationship with the landlord, if she turns against me and kicks me out..." He turned back and glanced at Arthas. "Where do you want me to find a house in this location, at this price, and where can I keep pets?" "I can turn into a woman and live with you," Arthas said. "Oh." Phone Bujua turned around, and his hand stopped moving. The first question he asked was, "Is she pretty?" "I'm just kidding. TSK. I thought this book was going to change to a more attractive theme." At 3 p.m., Phone Bujua finally finished his work. He cleaned up and sat before the computer. Thriller Paradise's server had been shut down on the morning of the 30th of May. After that, Brother Jew did not pay any attention to the official website or forum. In the past 2 days, he had been working on his manuscript and dealing with some daily chores. What was more unusual was that he had recently started to exercise regularly. Moreover, the amount of exercise was quite large. who knew what he was up to again. It's been more than 48 hours already. It's about time to go take a look. Phone Bujua mumbled as he opened Dream Inc.'s official website. He knew that things would be chaotic when the server was shut down, so he purposely waited for 2 days. Brother Jew opened the web page, and the headline that greeted him was, "Thriller Paradise's open beta has ended. The new version, Anomaly Invasion, will be released soon." Other announcements below it were, "Tournament for the best S1 has ended successfully. The final ranking has been announced, Crazy Thoughts demo will be closed today, and the closed beta will be released in late June. Due to the server update, the online marketplace will be suspended." Phone Bujue clicked on the announcement about the tournament for the best, and the link led him to the ranking page. This so-called ranking was no different from nothing because it said players in the same group are not ranked first or last. In other words, the players who were ranked 11th and 30th would not be ranked first or last. It was the same for the players ranked 31st to 50th. To put it bluntly, this ranking was to show that these 20 people had one prize A, and the other 20 had one prize B. Phone Bujua saw the ID Wang Tanji in the 11th to 30th list, and Sky-Swallowing Phantom Dawn was there as well. In a way, these two had achieved the same result in this competition. They had the same prize and the same ranking. Haha, I can already imagine the situation on the forum. Phone Bujua laughed drily and mumbled to himself. However, he did not go to the forum immediately, but clicked on the topic of Anomaly Invasion. After clicking on the headline, the web page led him to the details of the new patch. V1.10 version overview. A mysterious force suddenly entered people's sight. They were powerful AIs born from redundant data, the survivors who had survived the system's siege. The 4 pillars of divinity, who maintained the balance of the main universe, were facing a serious challenge. And the internal conflict among the anomalies was about to surface. In the new version, once a player entered a 6-person team scenario, nightmare only, there would be a 0.2% chance of encountering an anomaly. Other than the main mission, if the player successfully eliminated or helped the anomaly, they would be rewarded after clearing the scenario, regardless of whether the player died in the process. In the main universe, where the 4 pillars of divinity were, the player's actions would affect their alignment in the future storyline. New mode, new free exploration mode. This mode has no mission system, no time limit. The game time limit in real life is still there, no negative gaming effect, and only 1 player. After activating this mode, the player will be randomly assigned to any multiverse to explore. After the assignment, the player will be able to travel back and forth between the login lobby and the scenario through this safe house in this world. If the player leaves the scenario outside the safe house, including being killed, forced quitting, or being disconnected, the player's game coins, skill points, and EXP will be penalized accordingly. After entering this world again, the player will return to the safe house that was recorded last time. Every time the player entered the free exploration mode, they would spend 20,000 game coins. If the player was not satisfied with the universe that they were assigned to or got bored after a long period of exploration, they could use 500,000 game coins to redistribute. Changes to items, merchandise, and services. Now, the players could purchase large furnishings, including furniture and design modules like wallpaper, floor tiles, to decorate their meeting room and storage room. The Thriller box would no longer provide the service of exchanging skill points for game coins. The self-service barbershop had opened. The players could find the corresponding facilities in the market to adjust their hairstyle and beard. Other than consumables and some special items, all items above excellent quality, including trash, broken, and normal quality, would have the characteristic of bound after equipping or bound after use. Stamina point recovery potion had been removed from the game. The puzzle card exchange had been opened. The players could list the puzzle cards that they did not need at the exchange and barter for other items. When browsing the puzzle cards that other players listed at the exchange, the players could directly simulate the combination of the puzzle cards to prevent themselves from getting a useless puzzle card. The exchange would only charge a very low storage fee. The auction house would no longer accept puzzle cards as auction items. The weapon and equipment merchants had a new batch of goods. In the new update, the players had a chance to come across some excellent quality equipment in the system store. Of course, these items might not be cheaper than the ones sold at the auction house. Due to the strong demand from the players, we added various dresses to the players' attire. However, the price was quite expensive because each dress came with the corresponding safety shorts. The request to unlock intimate actions other than hugging and kissing and to loosen the protection against sexual harassment had been permanently rejected. At this point, we would like to remind the players who kept making such requests. Our database is connected to the law enforcement department. Ranking-related player combat ability ranking and level ranking have been removed. Club combat ability ranking has been removed. Currently, the ranking in the market is overall club combat ability ranking and overall player combat ability ranking. The anonymous function on the ranking has been removed, but the players could still refuse to be displayed on the ranking. The double buff granted according to the guild's ranking has been removed. The EXP bonus for teaming up with guild members has been removed. Now, when teaming up with guild members, under the condition that they are from the same faction, they will receive a random buff, and the level of the buff depends on the overall strength of the guild. Gameplay adjustments. The bloody and violent scenes in the game have been added to maintain realism. The simulation of pain has been further enhanced. The details of the patch were not limited to that. Many keywords have been added to the hyperlinks, and there was a very detailed explanation. With Feng Bujue's reading addiction, naturally, he clicked through them one by one and read through them. He not only read through them, he even went into deep thought. In the end, he concluded that the core of the changes in the new update were the following 3 points. First, many methods to reclaim game coins from the players have been added. Second, preparations have been made early on. There's been a place for max-level players to go, free exploration mode. Third, the existence of the anomaly has been covered up. The hyperlink had a description of the anomaly. The basic meaning was similar to what Waxiong and Panfeng had said, but it was not as detailed. These 3 things were the main purpose of the V1.10 update. The other changes should be considered normal fixes. For example, the service of exchanging skill points for game coins in the Thriller box was something that no one other than a newbie would do, so it could indeed be removed. The changes related to the ranking could be seen as removing the weak points and reorganizing them. The introduction of the puzzle board trading house was a new convenience service that could save money. It feels like there are many things that I can do now that I'm online, Feng Bujue mumbled to himself. At the same time, he moved the cursor to scroll to the forum. Chapter 502. In the past few days, the popularity of the gaming forum was even more shocking than the day of the open beta. In the 2 months of Thriller Paradise's open beta, the number of registered players had reached more than 3 million. Once the server was closed, these players naturally gathered on the forum. Of course, at least 60% of them were casual players. They played the game after work and study. They would only browse the forum for 10 minutes before closing it. The other 30% were hardcore players who were passionate about the game. They would come online whenever they had time, and they were interested in information and information related to the game. The active users on the forum were basically these people. The last 10% were naturally the industry insiders. For example, players from gaming studios, professional players, employees from gaming studios, and so on. These people were usually the trendsetters and trendsetters on the forum. To them, this forum was a battlefield without gunpowder. Words were their bullets, and information was their gun barrel. The battle here was far more dangerous than in the game, creating hype, guiding public opinion, and so on. It could be said that it was difficult, but it could also be said that it was not too difficult either. The more classic examples were A and B scolded each other, but in essence, it was to flatter each other. I kept on praising B, and then he was quickly slapped in the face by C. This was actually A and C working together to slander B. A scolded B as if his IQ and face had both collapsed, but in essence he was slandering C. A purposely provoked B's fan, C, and in the end, C used actual action to slap him in the face. But in reality, A and C were probably both B's fans, and the three of them were just acting together. In conclusion, there were all kinds of methods, and each had their own merits. Some could achieve their goal, and some could not. Some were so clever that after being tricked, you would still help them count the money. Some were so low-level that they would be seen through and rendered speechless. Without a doubt, online ghostwriters were a field of study, a very deep and dark field of study. This was a battle of IQ and EQ between a group of people and another group of people. The people they wanted to rope in and influence were those who followed the public opinion, those who did not have the ability to think on their own, or those who were too naive. Vote. Who do you think is the real champion? Phone Bujua looked at a voting post with the word hot in front of it and laughed. Oh, you guys are the ones who make a living out of this. You guys are really working hard. This kind of post was obviously the work of the studio staff. It was most likely done by order or Brahmin. Anyway, stars would definitely not post such a post. At most, they would let their own people rush into the post, and each of them would vote for unconstrained thoughts. There was another hot post with the title, "The Dream Company Changed the Rules Midway." The tournament for the best is riddled with dark secrets. A rematch is inevitable. This looked very much like Zombie Blade style. It was worth mentioning that there were signs that Zombie Blade's top player, Zombie Blade is King, had left the Zombie Blade studio. His picture and information had been removed from Zombie Blade's official website. In Thriller Paradise, the character Zombie Blade King had been removed. This incident caused quite a stir among the people in the industry. In addition to being interested in the reason for his resignation, people were more concerned about his whereabouts. If he didn't retire or change careers, where would he go? Would he join another studio or become a solo player? In the contract that Zombie Blade had canceled with him, was there a clause like non-competition? Even though he had been with Zombie Blade before and did not have a good reputation, business was business. If he really had the ability, the other studios would not reject him. If he repackaged himself with phrases like turning over a new leaf, he would still be a superstar player, and he would be able to slander Zombie Blade, killing two birds with one stone. Even though there are a lot of posts, the smell of gunpowder is not that strong. Phone Bujue flipped through the posts for a while, and he soon realized that most of the hot topics related to the competition were basically a bunch of trolls trying to find fault with each other. Most of the players' attention had already moved to the new version. It seemed that Wu Di's method of attacking the enemy under false pretenses was really effective. Making use of the big change in the update, he had exposed the side effects of the competition and the secret of the anomaly's existence. But 90% of the posts are still seriously nonsensical. Phone Bujue continued to flip through the posts and saw many interesting things. Many of the posts had funny titles like "My Opinion on the Free Exploration Mode." Is it really that hard to kill an anomaly? Let me teach you. Even a novice wouldn't believe in this kind of pure fantasy strategy. There were also regretful posts like, "If I knew this would happen, I would have sold the equipment earlier. Looks like the price of equipment will not drop," and so on. These people were quite reliable. At least they saw the effect of the equipment binding setting. In the future, there would not be a situation where a piece of equipment could be used from level 1 to 10 and could be sold at the auction house for money. Obviously, the sudden update of Thriller Paradise had stopped many of the pre-update trends that were common in other online games in its infancy. After reading the posts for a while, Phone Bujue started to deal with the messages on the forum. The number of messages in his forum account would not be less than the number in his in-game mailbox. After all, he was a celebrity now. Thankfully, the in-game mailbox and the forum's mailbox had the smart connection function, so the blocked list was connected. In other words, those who were blocked by Brother Jew in the game would be blocked on the forum as well. Even so, Phone Bujue's mailbox was filled with more than 10,000 messages. He scrolled through them and deleted them. After scrolling through several hundred pages, he found a message that Su Huaishang had sent him several days ago. Now that the finals were over, the message was meaningless. However, at least it showed that Goddess Su is a nice person. On the morning of the 2nd of June, the Dream Company finally released a new announcement on the official website. The server will be reopened at midnight on the 3rd of June. The updated version will be V1. 10. Anomaly Invasion. Once the announcement was released, the online ghostwriters all called it a day. The gaming studios turned their attention back to the game. The release of the new version meant that there was plenty of work to be done. They did not have the energy to dwell on the war that had already passed. In any case, after these 2 months, from Regulation and Brahmin to Frost Monarch and individual players, everyone in the gaming industry could see that Dream Inc.'s attitude toward the outside world could be summed up in 3 sentences. 1. A dead pig is not afraid of boiling water. 2. It's up to you whether you want to play or not. 3. If you dare to take advantage of me, I'll kill you. In the face of such an operator, all unconventional methods were useless. The 3rd of June, midnight. Fong Bujua logged into the game in sleeping mode. Recently, to train his body, he had adjusted his biological clock and started to pay attention to his diet. Therefore, it was already midnight, so he should have already fallen asleep. The 10th to 4th place players will randomly receive 3 skill cards corresponding to their highest mastery, for skill cards corresponding to other masteries, and 5,000 skill points. Fong Bujua mumbled to himself once he entered the login lobby. Humph! To think that I would have such a day. As a man who had been abandoned and despised by the goddess of luck, to be able to receive 7 skill cards at once was such a joy. He could not wait to open his mailbox. As he expected, the reward email was highlighted and pinned at the top of the mailbox interface. Congratulations on obtaining the 10th place in the tournament for the best. The title of the email was exceptionally pleasing to the eye. The attachment of the email was the 7 skill cards. As for the 5,000 skill points, Fong Bujua had already checked the menu earlier. When he entered the login lobby, he had already added them. Currently, Fong Bujua's strongest mastery was combat. After the tournament for the best, his combat mastery had already reached level A. Therefore, he obtained 3 combat-type skill cards at once. But his bad luck showed itself again at this moment. Because of his other 4 skill cards, 2 of them were for investigation and 2 of them were for healing. Other than the fighting mastery, Brother Jew's mastery was 1B for C and 2D, and he had drawn the 2 skills that were the weakest mastery. Fortunately, these skill cards were not bound to him. He could give them to his teammates in Underworld Frontline to use. If no one wanted to use them, he could sell them. Otherwise, half of his prizes would be useless. I have a bad feeling. Fong Bujua only glanced at the skill category and felt that something was wrong. He was a person who always prepared for the worst. Therefore, he had already considered several worse scenarios. For example, the skills that he had drawn were all level F. This was not impossible. The prize clause said, randomly receive 3 skill cards corresponding to the highest level mastery and 4 random skill cards corresponding to other mastery. The main point of this sentence was that it corresponded to the mastery and not the highest level. Therefore, theoretically speaking, a player could draw 7 level S skill cards. It was also possible that all 7 cards were level F skill cards. This reward related to luck was very interesting. If someone really got 7 level S skill cards at once, then his improvement would be greater than the top 3. Even if there were 4 cards that he could never learn, he could still exchange them for money or give them to his teammates. However, if someone was extremely unlucky and obtained 7 F-grade skills, then the reward would be extremely pitiful. It could even be said that it was not as good as the rewards for the 100th to 51st place. The total value of the 10 double EXP cards, 20,000 game coins, and a limited edition t-shirt was definitely higher than the 10 F-grade skills. Thankfully, there were still 5,000 skill points for the top 10. At least this was a hard currency that would never depreciate. No way. Fong Bujua put the 4 medic and sleuthing skill cards aside and looked at the first of the 3 fighting skill cards. Name, Sentry Kick skill type, Active skill, Permanent skill type, Fighting effect, Unleash a weak long-range / cooldown, 15 seconds, Consumption, 15 stamina points learning requirement, Fighting mastery F, Remark. The wind generated by a high-speed kick evolved into a vacuum / P.S. This skill has nothing to do with Rankyaku. It would be weird if it didn't. Fong Bujua roared. This is a complete knockoff. The consumption is only 1/10 of Rankyaku. The power is probably not even 1/10. And it has a F*King 15-second cooldown. This skill was indeed something that could be given up without any consideration. Brother Ju was a level A fighting mastery and had the real Rankyaku. There was no need for him to learn this knockoff sentry kick. Furthermore, the players only had 12 skill slots, and Feng Bujue had already equipped 11 skills. There was no way he would bring this along. Good. You got guts. 1/7 of the prize is wasted just like that. Feng Bujue grumbled. In a sense, it's 1/3. He raised his head, and no one knew who he was talking to. Ah, I thought there was someone protecting me. Looks like I've misunderstood. You don't want to win the bet anymore? Of course, no one would pay any attention to him for his shameless behavior. Feng Bujue waited for a few seconds, and seeing that there was no reaction, he could only give a try. His eyes turned again, and he picked up the second fighting skill card name. Rascal's lower whip kick skill type. Active skill, permanent skill type. Fighting effect. Ignores mastery level, 100% chance of tripping any monster that theoretically could be tripped and provoking the target to attack you. No cooldown. Consumption. 500 stamina points learning requirement. Fighting mastery area mark. This is the mischievous blue cat's 3,000 kicks. The heavens. Oh no. Hell has eyes. Feng Bujue laughed loudly. It seemed that he was quite satisfied with this skill. That's right, this was the permanent version of Rascal's lower whip kick that could only be learned at level F and could only be used 3 times. This was a typical strategic skill. The level A rating and the consumption of 500 stamina points were enough to prove its value. Feng Bujue soon stopped smiling. I need to calm down. I can't lose my composure because of great sadness or great joy. I'm not one to show my emotions on my face. Strangely enough, when he was with other people, Feng Bujue could act so naturally, but when he was alone, he would occasionally show his Chinibu side. That was probably the side effect of living alone at home and cooking Chinibu for a long time. Okay, as long as the third one is not a scam. Feng Bujue finally picked up the last fighting skill card and placed it before his eyes. Name, Baseball Fist LVL 1 skill type. Active skill, permanent skill type. Fighting effect. Punch out with both fists to launch a close combat attack at the enemy in front of you. Can be used whenever there is no target. Cooldown of 1 hour. Limited to 10 uses per scenario. Unlimited uses in free exploration mode. Consumption. 3 stamina points learning requirement. Fighting mastery F remark. This skill will level up according to the number of uses. Every 60 punches will increase 1 level, for a total of 10 levels. Chapter 503. June 3rd, 2000, 7 a.m. Feng Bujue left Xiao Tan's conference room and returned to his login lobby. Earlier, he had been discussing the renovation of the conference room with Passing Rain, Xiao Tan, and Laughing Soul. They had decided to use Xiao Tan's conference room as their meeting place. Therefore, things like the sofa, coffee table, and luxurious conference table, they bought him everything he needed. They even changed the wallpaper and flooring to make them more pleasing to the eye. After all, money was never a problem for a tycoon. Now, the few of them were quite familiar with each other. Even if they did not meet at Thriller Paradise, they would chat online. They had talked quite a bit about the tournament for the best a few days ago. Therefore, when they went online that day, the four did not bring up the tournament itself. Instead, they talked about the prizes. After Feng Bujue showed off his prize, he distributed the 4 sleuthing and medic mastery skill cards to his teammates. As for the sentinel skill, he planned to sell it at the shop. For a skill like that, even if he sold it at the auction house, he would have to pay the commission. Xiao Tan's prize aside, it was time to return to Feng Bujue. Since Brother Ju was now level 43, far ahead of his 3 teammates in Underworld Frontline, if they queued up together, it would increase the difficulty and decrease the reward. Therefore, he would not have the chance to queue up with them for the time being. He had already made a plan. In the coming days, he would reduce the number of times he logged into the game and try his best to only play nightmare mode scenarios. If he cannot clear them, then so be it. Even if he could clear them, he would not choose EXP but equipment as the reward. After all, he had the magical disintegrator, so it did not matter whether the equipment was bound or not. Now that he had said that, I'm sure everyone had a feeling that what was coming next was title, hate collector, title ability. Furnace of Hatred EXP 21000004300000 skill points 5,306 game coins 156400 mastery. General ability B, workmanship C, sleuthing D, fighting A, marksmanship C, medic D, sorcery C, summoning C. Inventory 1/15 Mario's wrench SCP 500-420 compound anti-gravity gun, Miss Moxie's bad temper, Belle of Jean Gang, life points recovery potion, M, X5, endless grenade. Magazine WJQ 308 military shovel, indestructible. Damn it can hold down mushroom X1. Pocket watch of deceit, magic soul pivot. Equipment, death poker, sorcery weapon. Echo armor, Artemis's embrace, transplanted alchemy amplification device. Void tread, phantom madam's caress. Storage 2 out of 10 jazz dance, puzzle card. Strawberry skills column 1/12, not so hasty repair. Spiritual body enhancement technique. Modified. Alchemist persistence. Southern Dipper flying dragon fist. Summoning technique. Musashi Kogani. Jeppo. Rankyaku. Sandstorm transition trigun summon technique. Ma-sun wild ball fist. Devilish child's kick unequipped skill. Wicked King's flame purgatory compared to before the tournament for the best. Feng Bujue's stats had not changed that much. The main difference was that his skill points had increased, his fighting mastery had increased by 1 level. He had taken a legendary item from Soul Snatcher, and other than that, his skill bar had overflowed. After some consideration, Feng Bujue decided to temporarily remove Wicked King's flame purgatory from his skill bar. Even though this was an active attack skill, Brother Ju had plenty of attack skills, so there was no need to bring too many with him. Perhaps when his level was higher, he could give up on the passive skill, Alchemist Bite, but for now, it was better to bring it with him. Okay, Feng Bujue arranged everything and stood before the touchscreen. The nightmare scenario that I haven't seen in a long time. After a few simple steps, the system announced. Feng Bujue, level 43. Please select the game mode that you wish to join. You have selected single-player survival mode, Nightmare. Please confirm. Confirmed. Generating scenario. Downloading. Please wait a moment. The elevator moved. Welcome to Thriller Paradise, a low female voice said. Download complete. You're currently playing single-player survival mode, Nightmare. A scenario introduction is provided in this mode, and there's a chance of triggering hidden side quests and special world building. Reward for clearing the scenario. Puzzle card X2, playing the scenario introduction soon. The game will start after that. It feels like it's moving downward. Feng Bujue mumbled as he listened to the system announcement. This way of entering, there won't be an introductory cinematic, right? But he was wrong, sha. Suddenly, the touchscreen next to Brother Ju changed on its own. An irregular, wavy black and white pattern appeared on the screen, and it was accompanied by a strange, rustling sound. In the 80s and 90s, television sets that used antennas to receive signals would often show this kind of image. But after the technology of the CRT, even if the television had no signal, the most it would show was a thin, regular snowflake. Something like this would be hard to come by anymore. However, Brother Ju had watched his fair share of old movies. So naturally, he had seen this before because there were many similar scenes in horror movies. Sha again. In a strange and blurry image, there was a voice. It sounded like a man's voice. Sha, you're late. Feng Bujue walked toward the screen with caution. He frowned and leaned closer to take a look. Is this the plot introduction? Tonight, you're late again, the voice said. The voice continued. His words were still very vague, but fortunately, the translation function of the game menu was triggered and very considerately provided subtitles. Obviously, you're a terrible night security guard. First, you can't even perform the most basic task of being on time. Second, you're always slacking off. You don't do any patrols at night and hide in the security room to sleep. Also, you flirt with the night nurses and female doctors whenever you have the chance. No one likes you, Lester. You're a sloppy, casual, unscrupulous, irresponsible guy. Your handsome face can leave a good first impression, but within 3 sentences, this impression will be defeated by your lewd words and actions. Tonight is your last night on duty here. Of course, you don't know this yet. Let me tell you, the Human Resources Department has decided to fire you, and you will be replaced by a gentleman who is about to retire. He was injured in the war, and his left leg is a bit lame, but everyone thinks he could do a better job than you. Now, go finish your job, or rather, finish your last shift. Do whatever you want. Chapter 504. It was unclear whether this was a monologue given by the NPC in the scenario to the player or a description given by the system audio. While the voice was talking, Feng Bujue's touchscreen kept flashing with various scary images. The images were blurry, and they were mixed in the black and white images. They were basically fleeting. Most of the things that were captured were strange. Strange shadows lying on the floor, dead bodies stuck to the wall, frightened faces, palm prints, children's backs, squirming organs, tangled hair, and so on. Finally, when the introduction ended, a bright red color appeared in the black and white image. A pair of blood-red eyes suddenly appeared on the screen and froze there. Not bad at all. Feng Bujue yawned and used a very casual tone to say, "The atmosphere is not bad. If this was anyone else, they would have been scared out of their wits just by looking at this introduction. But Brother Jew was still able to do it so easily. If these images are the microcosm of Lester's workplace," Feng Bujue said with a smile, "then his lateness and dozing off are understandable." When he said that, the elevator stopped. The door slowly opened. There was a wide corridor outside the door. The walls were white, and the floor was tiled. There was light coming from above, but the light was dim, and there were strange shadows mixed in the light. There won't be any killings outside the door, right? With that thought in mind, Feng Bujue took half a step forward and used his hand to hold the door of the elevator. Then he slowly and cautiously poked his head out. There was no one on either side of the corridor. Every set distance, there was a row of plastic chairs, and next to each of the chairs was a door. On each door, there was a clear door number that hung horizontally. Other than the number of floors and rooms, there were words like internal medicine and pediatrics on the door. It really is a hospital, Feng Bujue said. From a mention of nurse and female doctor in the introduction, this Lester should be working at a hospital. When the elevator door opened, Feng Bujue was even more certain. Be it the width of the corridor or the smell of disinfectant, they were all characteristics of a hospital. However, the smell of disinfectant did not appear to be the only thing in the air. Feng Bujue had a feeling that he had smelled something else, but it was hard to tell what it was. Okay, I guess I'm gonna work now. Feng Bujue took one step forward and walked out of the elevator. Chi! Bang! The moment he stepped out, the elevator door started to move, and half a second later, it slammed shut. When Feng Bujue turned back to look, the elevator door had changed. Its height had increased slightly, and its width had increased significantly. Most of the elevators in the hospital were like this. Considering that they might need to push the hospital bed into the elevator in an emergency, the loading capacity and the size of the door were close to that of a freight elevator. Then it's time to officially start. When Feng Bujue said that, he suddenly realized something. When he looked at his reflection on the elevator door, he saw another person. It was a Caucasian male in a security guard's uniform. He was about the same height as Brother Jew, and he did have a handsome face. This is Lester, right? Feng Bujue said to himself. So, when other people in the scenario see me, this should be how I look. Important reminder, your equipment effect has been reset to 0. Your skill and inventory have been locked. The items in your apparel pocket have been blocked, and some new items have been added. The system announcement came at the right time. Ha ha ha. Feng Bujua laughed drily. I knew it, this again. He had been through so many nightmare scenarios that he had gotten used to this situation. The players on the forum had come to a conclusion. The Nightmare Solo Survival mode was undeniably the mode with the highest chance of triggering restrictions. When the players played this type of scenario, there was a 50% chance that they would be affected by various restrictions. In other words, no matter how good you were at fighting, the system would find a way to make you experience what a nightmare was. Okay, then let me see, what can I use? Feng Bujua instantly reached into the pockets of his shirt and pants. After a self-search, he found the following: an open pack of chewing gum. There were 3 pieces left, a folding knife with a plastic handle, the kind commonly used to peel apples, a pair of sunglasses, a small can of hairspray, mini, a stinky white sock. Yes, there's only one, a small comb, half a pack of cigarettes, and a lighter. I don't have a phone with me. Feng Bujua scratched his chin. Is this the limitation of the scenario? Or does it mean that I'm living in an era where phones are not that common? While he was thinking, the system announcement came again. Main quest has been triggered. Almost instinctively, Feng Bujua opened the game menu and summoned the quest tab. There was a warning that was filled with malice. Stick to your job and survive until dawn. My life is in danger just because of a night shift at the hospital. This world sure is getting harder and harder, Feng Bujua complained as he turned around and walked down the corridor on his left. In any case, I should look for something like a map to confirm the layout of the scenario. His eyes scanned the place cautiously, not even letting go of the cracks on the wall, afraid that he might miss a clue. The doors to the consultation rooms are all closed, and there is no light coming out from behind them. This is probably the outpatient department. Since no one comes here at night, all the rooms are locked. When Feng Bujua walked past the doors, he did not forget to make some speculations. By the way, this corridor sure is long. He walked for a while, but he still could not find a map on the wall. He could not help but turn back to look. As a result, he saw a very strange scene. The moment he turned back, the lights in the corridor flickered twice. In a short moment when the lights went off, a white, shimmering shadow appeared in the dark corridor. It was standing quite far away from Feng Bujua. It looked about the size of a thumb, and it was hard to tell whether it was a dot left on the retina or a real shadow. In any case, when the light returned, the white shadow disappeared. If a normal person saw this, their terror points would have spiked, and they would have turned to leave. However, Feng Bujua narrowed his eyes and used the state of a person who was trying his best to study the row of icons at the bottom of the corridor. TSK, are you trying to scare me? He said arrogantly as he pulled out a pair of sunglasses from his pocket and put them on. He did not know whether to celebrate or regret. Brother Ju's action was indeed immediate. He put on the sunglasses, and the white shadow appeared again, and this time, it was standing less than 1 meter away from Feng Bujua. It was a person covered in bandages. Based on the size of the person, it appeared to be male. Other than his eyes and nostrils, his whole body was bandaged. Upon closer inspection, one could see fresh blood seeping out from the gaps between the bandages. Feng Bujua stared at the person for a few seconds before putting the sunglasses back up. This time, he could no longer see the person in bandages. Then, Brother Ju put the sunglasses back down, and this time, he could see again. Hua, 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 hua. He repeated the word hua as he moved the sunglasses up and down like he was looking at an invisible ink painting. The bandaged person stood in front of Brother Ju and did not make any offensive moves. However, from the bandaged person's eyes, it was clear that he was surprised by Brother Ju's reaction, and this surprise quickly turned into a pain in the ass. The bandaged person finally could not take it anymore. The security guard in front of him did not seem to be afraid at all. This was too much of a blow to the ghost's self-esteem. Thus, he raised his hands, opened his mouth, and slowly approached Brother Ju. You want to fight? Feng Bujua used his middle finger to push the sunglasses up the bridge of his nose and put them on. Then, he took a large step back and assumed Huang Feihong's signature pose. It looked like he was going to fight this bandaged man head-on. Aren't you afraid of me? The bandaged person stopped in his tracks and stammered under the bandages. Me? Afraid of you? Feng Bujue used a condescending gaze to scan the man up and down. You've already been beaten up, so why should I be afraid of you? I am a ghost. Do you know what that means? The bandaged person lowered his voice and used what he thought was the scariest tone he could muster. No, I don't. Feng Bujue was telling the truth. The setting of the ghost in each scenario was different, so how could he know? Then, do you know? Feng Bujue took over the conversation and asked, what do you mean by hua? Air. The bandaged person was stumped by the question. Ah, the bandaged person screamed and ran away. It was unclear whether he was scared or scared. TSK, you're too weak. Feng Bujue scoffed. He removed the sunglasses, shrugged, and turned to move forward. Looks like the ghosts in this scenario rely on teleportation, electrical interference, and flickering in and out of existence to scare people. As long as they don't have the ability to teleport objects or make physical contact, they are no different from farts to me. He walked for another 10 seconds before he reached a T-junction. On the wall of the junction, a floor plan of the hospital finally appeared. But I can't let my guard down, Feng Bujue said as he walked. Nightmare difficulty won't be that easy. For a scenario that limits one's ability, other than a test of terror points, there will be many extremely difficult puzzles. Chapter 505. Ominous premonitions often turned into reality. When Feng Bujue came to the wall with anticipation, and when he saw the plastic drawing board on the wall, the first nasty puzzle finally appeared. It turned out that the map on the drawing board was not arranged in an orderly manner. Other than the title at the top, Cedar County Public Hospital 2F floor map, the rest of the content was a mess. The drawings were not right, the words were not right. It looked like a big jigsaw puzzle that was misplaced. Oh, is this a test of the player's memory ability? Feng Bujue looked at the messy diagram and mumbled to himself, puzzles are my specialty. As he said that, he steadied himself. His left hand held his right elbow, and his right hand held his chin. His eyes glowed like a torch as he started the mental puzzle. 5 minutes passed without him noticing. Feng Bujue still stood in the same position and mumbled, This is much more complicated than I thought. After careful observation, he realized that the puzzle pieces on the drawing board were all irregular shapes. There were about 20 of these patterns mixed together and dislocated to form the map in front of him. This was much more difficult than the usual rectangular or zigzag puzzles. It was already difficult for the human brain to memorize so many diagrams in such a short period of time. The difficulty of arranging these diagrams in one's mind was self-evident. Looks like it's going to take a lot of time. Brother Bujue mumbled. Bang, bang. Then there was another change. There was a series of powerful footsteps coming from behind him, gradually approaching. Is that bandage guy here again? Feng Bujue mumbled and slowly turned around. At the same time, his hand reached into his pocket to take out his sunglasses. Unexpectedly, this time, he saw something else. He saw a burly figure slowly walking toward him. The monster had a sarcoma-like head and was almost 3 meters tall. The top of its head was almost touching the ceiling, and the muscles on its body were bulging F***CK. Feng Bujue saw the monster and was shocked. Lester, you bastard. On the monster's wart-like head, there was a crack that looked like a mouth. There were 2 rows of sharp teeth in the crack. It was using this mouth to roar, I'm going to kill you. Feng Bujue put on his sunglasses and glanced at the man. Then he quickly took them off because he realized that it was the same when he looked at the man with his naked eyes. What's going on? I didn't set up any flags. The man's movement speed was not too fast, and he was still quite far away, so Feng Bujue was not in a hurry to escape. Oh, I understand. He seemed to have thought of something. Have I stayed in the same place for too long? This analysis was not without reason, because the main mission of the scenario was stay at your post and survive until dawn. Therefore, theoretically speaking, as long as the players did not leave the hospital and ensured that they would not die, they could do anything. Even if Feng Bujue simply squatted in a corner without any monsters and did not explore, he would not be judged to be playing AFK-like. Hint: if you stay in the corridor for too long, the angry worker, Chad, will appear. The powerful Chad can easily tear you into pieces, so you need to escape as soon as possible. You can escape from Chad's pursuit by entering a room. Chad will linger at the door of the room for 1 minute before leaving. The system notification entered his ears and supported his analysis. Then this is strange. The puzzle of this map is not something that can be solved in a short period of time, right? Fong Bujue thought about it as he turned around and walked to the left side of the T-junction. Do I need to find a disposable camera to snap a picture of the map on this board and then tear the picture into pieces to solve the puzzle? Fong Bujue had a bit of an obsessive-compulsive disorder. If he was asked to give up on a half-solved puzzle, he would feel uncomfortable all over. But since there was a monster that he had to kill, he had no choice but to run. Hey, Chad. When Fong Bujue was running, he did not forget to turn back to chat with the worker who moved at a normal speed. What kind of grudge do we have? Why do you have to do this? You slept with my sister, Chad roared. You give me a reason that makes me speechless. Fong Bujue grumbled. Then he turned back to yell, I believe there must be a misunderstanding. Perhaps we are in love. Before he could finish, the tendons on the side of Chad's neck suddenly grew. As a ball of pus exploded, his second head popped out from the side of his neck. It was also a blob of flesh with a blurry face, but it was a woman's voice. Lester, you be *starred. You said you would call me. Hint: you have angered Chad and activated his sister's vengeful spirit. From now on, his power will be further enhanced. Before the system notification ended, the twin-headed giant picked up its pace. This time, Brother Jew was not going to run so leisurely anymore. He sprinted and started to search for the door closest to him. This flag came out of nowhere. Fong Bujue grumbled. Singing Huo Yuanjia can chase the monster away, but negotiating with it will only worsen the situation. Soon, he was close to the door of a consultation room. He did not have time to think about it. He ran to the door and grabbed the doorknob to turn it. Then the most classic system notification appeared. Cannot be opened. What the F***CK? Fong Bujue yelled as he stood up and started running again. In a few seconds of delay, Chad got even closer. This meant that Brother Jew could not stop to try other doors. He could only try to put some distance between them, or else he would be attacked the moment he stopped to open the door. I knew I couldn't be careless. Fong Bujue thought to himself. If I had known this would happen, I would have turned and run the moment I saw him. At that moment, his recent experience in real life came into play. After Fong Bujue got serious, he quickly adjusted his breathing, footsteps, and running posture. Once again, he shook off his pursuer. However, at this delicate moment, another absurd scene appeared in front of him. At the end of the corridor, there was a staircase. The staircase did not go up or down. Instead, it was connected to the wall on the right and extended to the side. What the hell? Fong Bujue's eyes widened. Since he would die if he stopped, he had no time to think. He could only grit his teeth and continue. In the end, he managed to run up the staircase that extended to the side. When Brother Jew put his foot on the staircase, he felt the gravity of the area in front of him shift. At that moment, his mind buzzed and he figured it out. The map is correct. Chapter 506. So that's how it is. The layout of this hospital is not arranged according to the laws of physics. It is a 3D map. Fong Bujue thought to himself as he ran up the stairs. Just looking at one map will naturally make one feel confused, but if one overlaps the map of all the floors together, it will form a 3D model. Of course, even if I can construct that model in my mind, in this kind of place where the gravity changes according to the terrain, it won't be that useful. With that in mind, the stairs under his feet came to an end. Fong Bujue came to another corridor. The lights here were the same as before. Even though they were white, there was a layer of shadow, causing the scenery before him to appear gray. This is also the second floor? Fong Bujue looked at the door number in the distance. The clinic that I was at earlier was also on the second floor. As expected, this kind of horizontal staircase will lead the player to the same level. For me earlier, I was in a 90-degree horizontal position. His mind was racing, and his actions were continuous. After all, there was a pursuer behind him, and he could not let his guard down. Feng Bujue walked quickly to a door. There was only a number on the door, 216. There was no text on it, so it was probably a sick room. With a click, the doorknob turned smoothly. At that moment, Chad's two heads poked out from the staircase, and they roared as they chased after Chingu. Feng Bujue had no other choice. He could not slowly push the door open and explore the way carefully before entering the room. His inventory was locked, so he could not use the Bell of Jin Gang to explore the way. Even if he could use it, it probably would not have much effect because he was already in a life-threatening situation. If he activated the special effect, the Bell of Jin Gang would definitely ring wildly. Brother Ju had no choice but to push the door open and enter. He turned around and closed the door. Chad's footsteps stopped abruptly the moment the door was closed. It was as though the giant had disappeared without a trace in a second. What kind of setting is this? Is a normal door going to be able to stop him? Feng Bujue leaned against the door and gasped for air. Because of his size, he gave up the moment he saw the door frame. He could not help but laugh. How was this different from a noisy child seeing a staircase? Feng Bujue quickly scanned the room in front of him while he was adjusting his breathing and emotions. This was a rather large ward. The lights in the room were not turned on, and the windows facing the corridor were also closed with curtains. However, with the help of the light that seeped through the gaps in the curtains, he could roughly make out the outlines of some objects. 1, 2, 3. Feng Bujue counted. There were a total of 6 beds in the room. They were all placed against the wall, with 3 beds on each side. Next to each bed was a U-shaped metal frame with curtains hanging from it. When the curtains were pulled up, they would cover the bed. This should be the worst ward. Feng Bujue mumbled. He had stayed in a hospital for a long time, so he was familiar with this kind of environment. Generally speaking, the better wards in the hospital were those with 2 people in a room and a TV. The wards with 6 or even more people in a room were the worst grade, and the conditions were comparable to group renting. Of course, there were single rooms. Some could be moved in as long as one had money, and some could only be moved in by people of a certain rank or power. There were also some special cases. For example, extreme cases might require a sterile room, but hospitals with poor conditions might not have such treatment facilities. In short, Feng Bujue was very familiar with this kind of problem. When he first got sick, he had almost used all the facilities in all the major hospitals in S-City. The wards he stayed in were upgraded gradually, and the doctors who came to consult him were more famous than the last. The tests he did were all-encompassing, from a normal ward for multiple people to a VIP single room, from a resident doctor in a district hospital to a world-renowned expert. From the perspective of a patient, Feng Bujue was indeed a person who had seen a lot. He could be considered to have become famous because of his illness, and in the medical field in the middle of the 21st century, he left a strong mark. Since I'm already here, Feng Bujue reached out his hand to touch the light switch, but halfway through he stopped. If there really is a patient here, and turning on the light will trigger some kind of flag, then I'm in a very bad situation. After thinking for a few seconds, he decided not to make any noise. He would stand at the door for a minute, and then turn on the light. This was for safety's sake. There was nothing wrong with being cautious. After all, it was only for a minute. 1 minute later, Chad would definitely leave. Even if he triggered another deadly situation, he would still be able to escape. He could also choose to run back to the corridor. Therefore, Feng Bujue waited at the door for more than a minute. Then he opened the door and poked his head out to make sure Chad was gone. Then he closed the door, turned around, and turned on the light switch. There were a total of 4 ceiling lights in this room, and they were all embedded in the ceiling. Brother Bujue turned on all the lights in the room at once, and the room was brightly lit. At this moment, the 6 beds in the room were all surrounded by curtains, and they were all tightly enclosed. This kind of trick, Feng Bujue took out a foldable knife from his pocket. He held the blade in his hand and walked forward slowly. It's not much different from a game where you have to check every cubicle in the toilet. He walked to the window at the other end of the room and pulled the curtain aside to look outside. Pa 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 pa. At that moment, he heard a series of rushed and strange noises coming from beside him. Fong Bujua whipped his head around when he heard the noise, and he saw 6 bloody handprints on the wall beside him. Is this triggered by looking outside the window? He mumbled to himself as he moved his gaze back to the window, like the appearance of these handprints was something normal. It was dark outside the window, and Fong Bujua's own reflection was reflected on the glass. Or rather, it was Lester's reflection. Just as Brother Ju focused his gaze on the window, Lester's reflection started to laugh. At the same time, a creepy laughter also drifted into Fong Bujua's ears. It is indeed very scary, Fong Bujua said thoughtfully. For a normal person, when their attention is attracted by the bloody handprint, they will already be shocked. When they turn their head back and see the reflection in the glass smiling, there's a chance that they will be scared out of the scenario. After Brother Ju said that, he pulled the curtain back up like nothing had happened. Okay, let's see what's on the beds. Fong Bujua held the knife and walked to the bed closest to him. He reached his hand toward the curtain. Suddenly, a pale hand reached out from behind the curtain and gripped Fong Bujua's wrist tightly. Chapter 507. A hoarse moan came from behind the curtain. It should have come from the owner of the hand. Generally speaking, if the protagonist of a horror movie encountered such a situation, it was very likely that he would be scared to the point of screaming, and his legs would give way and he would fall to the ground. But Fong Bujua was very calm, and his reasoning did not stop for a moment. Left hand. The wrinkles on the back of the hand are obvious, and the fingernails are dry and thick. It looks like the hand of an old man, but the grip is amazing. The veins under the skin are bulging, and there are a lot of puncture marks near the veins. The skin is abnormally white, and there is a smell of formalin. It is not a coincidence that he was able to grab my wrist through the curtain. Brother Ju's eyes turned, and his mind raced. At that moment, he had 3 plans in his mind. First, he would grab the folding knife and stab him. Second, he would twist his hand, pull the person out, and throw him over his shoulder. Third, he would open the curtain and take a look, considering that his current combat ability was no different from that of a normal person. Fong Bujua finally chose the safer method. So, he reached out his other hand, still holding the knife, and used his index finger and thumb to pinch the long curtain beside the bed and pulled it horizontally. Buzz, buzz, the plastic ring at the top of the curtain rubbed against the iron bar and made a strange noise. The person on the bed soon appeared in front of Fong Bujua. Overall, it was an old man who looked like a mummy. He was lying on the bed on his back, wearing a light blue hospital gown. His skin was pale, and his whole body was stiff. At first glance, Brother Ju knew that the person in front of him was most likely not a living person, because on the surface of the old man's body, there were hundreds of 4 tubes. The ends of the tubes were all connected to the wall above the bed, and there was a black liquid flowing in the tubes. The needles at the front of the 4 tubes were all inserted into the old man's skin at a 90-degree angle. The places where the needles were inserted were his forehead, neck, torso, through his clothes, soles of his feet, and so on. Not only were there tubes inserted in these places, but the most shocking thing was that even his 2 eyeballs were inserted with infusion tubes. That was truly painful to look at. The old man grabbed Brother Ju's wrist and did not let go. He slowly turned his head. Although there were needles in both of his eyeballs, he still looked at Brother Ju and said with difficulty, "I'm so thirsty. I'm so thirsty. Uncle, have you heard of the saying, one can take medicine but not an injection? One can take an injection but not a drip?" The World Health Organization has emphasized this many times. "I'm so thirsty." The old man ignored him and continued his line. Fong Bujua sighed and followed the NPC's routine. "Okay, I'll get you some water to drink." "I want to drink iced beer," the old man replied. "Uncle, have you heard of the saying, You need to work harder than you need to work harder? Feng Bujue asked. In your condition, is it appropriate to drink alcohol? He looked up at the wall above the bed. Speaking of which, what is flowing into your body from the wall? Is it petroleum or coke? Dr. Pepper, the old man replied. Thank you for your hard work. Feng Bujue's lips twitched as he mumbled. Dr. Pepper is the name of a soft drink. Its English name is Dr. Pepper, also known as Pungquan, Dr. Piper, etc. This drink has a large number of loyal fans around the world because of its unique taste. Its taste is very subtle. In South Park, it was parroted as the drink for agnostics. I want to drink iced beer. The old man repeated again. Okay, I understand. During the conversation, Feng Bujue kept trying to pull the old man's hand away, but to no avail. Therefore, he could basically conclude that this was a side mission that he had to accept once triggered. I'll get it for you now. Thank you. When the old man heard this, he let go of Brother Ju's wrist. At the same time, the system prompted. Side mission has been triggered. In the mission panel, a new line of instructions was added. Buy a bottle of iced beer from the vending machine in the restaurant lobby and bring it to Mr. Harper in room 216. Oh, you Mr. Harper, right. Feng Bujue looked at the game menu and said to the old man in front of him, Can you tell me how to get to the restaurant? I'm so thirsty. So thirsty. Harper ignored Brother Ju's question and moaned softly to himself. Very good. Feng Bujue shook his wrist that was sore from the old man's grip and said with a shrug, There are no hints at all. This is too damn interesting. Even though he was forced to accept the side mission, Feng Bujue was still hesitant about whether to complete it or not. Theoretically speaking, if I stay in this room until dawn, won't I be able to clear the scenario? Feng Bujue thought. But based on the nature of the scenario, it probably won't allow me to stay in the same place for too long. Staying in the corridor for too long will attract Chad. So, staying in a room for too long might attract other things as well. With that in mind, he walked to the second bed, the one next to Mr. Harper's. This time, Feng Bujue pulled open the curtain without hesitation. However, there was nothing on the bed. Humph, do you think I'll fall for that? Brother Ju scoffed and took out his sunglasses. In the next 5 minutes, he used his sunglasses and his naked eye to inspect every nook and cranny of the bed. He also flipped the bedsheet over and over, touching and smelling it. He almost put it in his mouth to taste it. Even after doing all that, he didn't stop there. He even used a folding knife to knock on the bed frame to see if there was a key or something like that hidden inside. In the end, after spending a lot of energy and effort, he was 100% sure that this was just an empty bed used as decoration for the scenario. Okay, next. Brother Ju did not seem to mind. Even though he was doing something useless, he seemed to enjoy it. Hey, listen to me, man. Just as Feng Bujue was about to walk to the third bed, a voice suddenly came from behind him. It sounded like a middle-aged man's voice. I'm here behind you. Feng Bujue turned around and looked in the direction of the voice. The voice came from a middle bed on the other side of the room. The bed was also tightly enclosed by a curtain. Are you calling me? Brother Ju asked tentatively. That's right. The voice replied. Can you come over for a moment? Sure. Feng Bujue said as he tiptoed over. When he reached a certain distance, he suddenly stretched out his hand and quickly pulled open the curtain in front of the bed. Then, he shrunk back as fast as lightning. What are you doing? The middle-aged man, sitting on the bed, looked at Brother Ju. His eyes seemed to say, Is this kid crazy? Feng Bujue looked at the man from head to toe and immediately asked, Are you a vampire? The reason he asked this question was because the other party's features were quite obvious. His face was basically the same as the classic vampire in Disney cartoons. White face, red lips, receding hair, sharp teeth, thin face, and a cold temperament. If the man was wearing a suit and not a patient's garb, Brother Ju wouldn't have asked him about it. Hey kid, do you know it's rude to ask that? The vampire replied. Are you a racist? No. Forget it. Feng Bujue quickly shook his head. My name is Richard Sutherland. You can call me the Earl, the Earl said. Don't listen to his nonsense. Another sharp voice came from the bed on the Count's right, which was the bed directly opposite Mr. Harper. He's not the Count. Shut up, you drunkard. The Earl shouted to the side. The voice called drunkard retorted, The Earl has a castle. Do you have one? This is nonsense. The Earl retorted. Who made this rule? Anyway, it's like this, the drunkard replied. While the two of them were arguing, Fong Bujue had already moved a few steps to the side and pulled open the curtains by the drunkard's bed. On the bed, there was a green-skinned, extremely short creature. He had a sharp nose, sharp ears, big eyes, and a big mouth. There was no doubt that he was a goblin. Moreover, he was wearing a hospital gown at this moment. What are you doing? Don't you know how to respect other people's privacy? After the curtains were pulled open, the goblin shouted at Fong Bujue. Sorry, I didn't expect that someone who eavesdropped and joined in on other people's conversations would care about privacy. Fong Bujue used a strong point to refute the goblin. The goblin was speechless. Ha! The Earl laughed. You're defeated. Victor, to think you would have such a day. Oh, you're Victor? Fong Bujue asked. It's the great Victor Ridwax. Victor replied. He's a well-known trading tycoon. He's just smuggling all kinds of alcohol and firearms, the Count said. Shut up. You're a fake noble. Shut up. You're a black-hearted speculator. The two of them started arguing again. Fong Bujue sighed and watched for a while. When the two of them slowed down, he took the opportunity to ask the Earl, So, why did you ask me to come here? Oh, yes. The Earl turned his head and replied. Are you going to get beer for Harper? I want you to go to the blood bank and get some blood for me. It's best if it's type B blood. I don't need much. 2 bags will do. Huh? Fong Bujue replied weakly. If you want to suck blood, isn't there a ready-made goblin beside you? Hey! Victor immediately shouted in dissatisfaction. That's too barbaric. Sucking blood from living creatures is an animal behavior. The Earl looked at Brother Jew with a puzzled expression. Young man, have you watched too many violent movies? Fong Bujue's mouth twitched as he laughed dryly. In a sense, your answer reassured me. Oh yes, if you're going to the blood bank, help me bring something back, Victor said. Yesterday, I lost a key. I think I lost it in the pediatric emergency consultation room on the first floor. If you can help me find it, I'll reward you handsomely. No problem. Fong Bujue agreed easily. Of the whole sentence that Victor said, the most important part was undeniably the last few words. I won't let you make a wasted trip, the Earl said. Bring me the blood, and I'll give you something in exchange. Okay. Fong Bujue had thought it through. Since he had to go out, he might as well accept more missions and collect the items before returning. Side mission triggered. The system prompt appeared. Brother Jew had 2 new missions in his mission column. Obtain 2 bags of type B blood from the blood bank and bring them to Earl Richard Sutherland in Ward 216. Find Victor's key in the pediatric consultation room in Ward 1F and return it to Victor Ridwax in Ward 216. Lastly, I have a question. Fong Bujue looked at the two of them and asked, I see that both of your limbs are intact and unrestrained. Why don't you do it yourself? I have cirrhosis of the liver and can't move around, Victor replied. The Count's reply was even more straightforward. Anemia. Chapter 508. After accepting the 3 side quests, Fong Bujue stayed in room 216 for another 5 minutes. In those 5 minutes, he inspected the rest of the beds and confirmed that the 2 beds were empty as well. He tried to get information from the Duke and Victor, but the two ignored him completely and continued to argue. It looked like he would not be able to get any hint from these 2 NPCs. Then Brother Jew searched the 4 bedside tables in the room. Naturally, he could not touch the Duke and Victor's bedside tables. In the end, he found a strange coin inside Mr. Harper's table. After doing all that, he opened the door and walked down the corridor. This scenario's setting is quite sharp. Fong Bujue walked down the corridor slowly. He played with the coin with one hand and mumbled, From the description of this coin, this should not be the human world. Name, coin type, plot item quality, normal function, can be used to purchase the coin from the vending machine in the restaurant lobby. Can be taken out of the scenario, no remark. The most common currency in the Monster Kingdom. Due to the constant changes in the exchange rate, the bartering habit cannot be eradicated, so there is no specific denomination printed on the coin. Due to the king being killed by adventurers, or his own relatives, and sometimes accidentally self-destructing, there is no picture of the king on the coin. Since this is the monster kingdom, Fong Bujue could not help but think, then, am I a monster as well? He scratched his head. But from the reflection, Lester should be a person. Is there something special about him under the clothes? That was difficult. Even though in the scenario, when the other characters looked at Fong Bujue, they appeared to be Lester. When Brother Ju looked at him, he was still in a purple suit. Furthermore, even if he found a mirror, he would not be able to remove his shirt. Therefore, only the heavens knew what kind of monster Lester was. Wait a minute. A thought crossed Fong Bujue's mind. Then what about the man in the bandage and the Chad siblings? He thought to himself. The man in the bandage asked me, "Are you not afraid of me?" And I'm not afraid of you. And he even said something like, "I'm a ghost. Do you know what that means?" He stroked his chin and muttered, "Logically speaking, what he meant was, I, a living person, should be afraid of ghosts." He frowned slightly. Also, regarding Chad's sister, the system defines her as a vengeful spirit. She's also a ghost. He thought as he walked, and before he knew it, he had come to another corner. Could it be? Fong Bujue changed his train of thought slightly, and he was suddenly enlightened. Oh, so the general meaning is the monsters in the monster kingdom and the humans in the human world are actually the same. In this world, a ghost is a very scary thing. He seemed to be saying a tongue twister. In any case, this scenario is a haunted hospital in a monster kingdom. As he thought about this, he turned the corner. He just turned around when he saw a figure walking toward him. "Hi, Lester." A nurse appeared before Fong Bujue and greeted him coquettishly. She was wearing a white nurse uniform with a low neckline, a short skirt, and long white stockings. Her body was curvaceous, and the cleavage before her chest was immeasurably deep. She had a slender waist and a pair of long legs that could cause one's imagination to run wild. However, this nurse had the head of an insect. The head above her neck was that of a giant mosquito. It had a pair of large, bulging compound eyes and a drooping beak that buzzed when she spoke. The strangest thing was there were no antennae on her head, but a mosquito coil. Yes, a mosquito coil. And it was the most traditional spiral-shaped mosquito coil, the kind that was burning and giving off smoke. Jenny. Fong Bujue looked at the name on the nurse's badge. He walked around the nurse and turned to leave. "Good night." What's wrong with you?" Jenny turned around and asked. "Why did you run away when you saw me? How am I supposed to answer this kind of question? I feel like there are too many things to ask about that head of hers." Fong Bujue mumbled to himself. On the surface, he still replied politely, "It's nothing. I just happen to have something on hand. Yo." Jenny placed her hand on Brother Bujue's shoulder and leaned closer. "What is it?" she asked in a soft voice. "Is it about the thing that you and I did in the storage room on the 3rd floor during your shift the night before yesterday? Lester is so powerful. In every sense of the word, he is so powerful." Fong Bujue roared in his mind, but on the surface, he said in a serious tone, I really do have something to do, tisk." Jenny scoffed and rolled her eyes at Brother Ju. Every eye on her compound eyes rolled back at the same time. "You're such a prude." Then she waved her hands, swayed her hips, and turned to walk away gracefully. Fong Bujue yelled in his mind, "What is this? Are you really a nurse? Are you sure you're not a role player at the nightclub? The Monster Kingdom is so open. After playing Thriller Paradise for so long, I finally met a super casual NPC in the scenario, but it was a mosquito." After bidding farewell to Jenny, Fong Bujue continued to move forward based on the map in his memory. Even though the map was not that valuable, it was better than walking blindly. Brother Bujue believed that, as long as he looked at the places with the breaks on the map, he should be able to find the spot to change the floor. If that did not work, he had thought about it. At most, he would retrace his steps and stay in room 216 for a minute before running back to the elevator at the beginning of the scenario and taking the elevator to change the floor. Just like that, he walked for another 5 minutes before Feng Bujue finally saw something worth celebrating. Not far away from him, on the wall on his left, there was a door. It was an electric sliding door that opened to the left and right, similar to the ones used in convenience stores. However, the door was in a horizontal position, which meant that it opened from top to bottom. Feng Bujue walked closer, and the door opened on its own. Behind the door was a very short corridor, and 3 meters away was a T-junction. If the gravity changes, Feng Bujue mumbled to himself as he lay down. He sat on the ground and moved forward. When he was close to the edge of the door, he lay down flat and used the bottom of his feet to aim at the door on the wall. Then, he slowly reached his feet into the door. When both of his legs were in, the gravity did indeed shift. Feng Bujue fell into the door with his feet facing the direction of the door. Since he had adjusted his posture beforehand, he successfully landed on his feet. Even though he did not have the aid of equipment and skills, and his physical fitness was not that high, the difference of 2 to 3 meters was not enough to kill him. The impact after landing was much smaller than Brother Bujue expected. He understood immediately. After all, Lester was a monster. His physical fitness was probably stronger than a normal human being, and the difference between the floors was within his acceptable range. This place is... After Feng Bujue landed, he looked around. From the number of the door, not far away, this should be the first floor. He was not sure where the cafeteria and blood bank were, but the pediatric emergency clinic was definitely at 1F. That was stated in the mission tab. In other words, coming to this floor would allow him to complete at least one side quest. Furthermore, earlier, the Count and Victor had used terms like on the way and on the way, so the chance of the cafeteria and blood bank being on the same floor was very high. The corridor is no different from the one on the second floor. After Feng Bujue steadied himself, he picked a direction and walked down it. By the way, after leaving room 216, I've been walking for quite some time already, but Chad hasn't shown up. He thought back to the earlier system notification and said, so, as long as I keep moving, I won't be hunted down? He soon overturned that assumption. No, in that case, I only need to keep walking up and down the corridor to clear the scenario. He was thinking when another corner appeared before him. Then, for now, I'll assume that the basis of this scenario is AF King. Feng Bujue continued. The main mission of this scenario gives the player a high degree of freedom, so it uses a monster like Caretaker Chad to replace the punishment of AF King. He licked his lips. The terrain here is complicated, and I'm not familiar with this place. If I run into a dead end after triggering Chad's pursuit, and there are no doors nearby that can be opened, then I'll be dead meat. With that in mind, he picked up his pace. Danger is everywhere. There is a price to pay to understand the rules. After all, this is nightmare mode, so it's never wrong to plan ahead. As he walked, suddenly, a series of noises echoed in his ears. Clang, 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 clang. The sound came from a room with the number 109 on it. It sounded like someone was knocking on something made of iron. Is this another trick to scare people? Feng Bujue wondered. Or is this some kind of event waiting to be triggered? Clang, 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 clang. As Feng Bujue got closer, the sound became more urgent. When he reached the door, the sound kept on ringing. This feels like a death trap. Brother Ju stood before the door and said calmly. It was a door that did not have a lock, and it could be opened with a push. It was indeed suspicious. Normally speaking, in a scary puzzle game, it was best not to barge into a room that was obviously creepy and scary. First, he would look for clues, items, and the like nearby or elsewhere before entering. Perhaps he would be able to resolve the instant death plot. However, Thriller Paradise was a game that was filled with malice. The system was very reasonable in some aspects and very unreasonable in others. The door in front of him was most likely a classic horror trap. Brother Ju pushed the door open, and he might face a death trap, but if he turned and left, he might die as well. No hint, no clue. Feng Bujue mumbled. Is this a pure gamble? He thought about it for a second. No, this is a test of the player's courage. With that in mind, He stepped forward and pushed the door open. Ah! There was a shrill scream. A ghastly pale ghost face flew over. This was the simplest and most direct method to scare people. It was obvious, but it was always effective. Unfortunately, it was useless against Feng Bujue. I knew it. Feng Bujue's face was calm, and one could even say that he was disappointed. After the screams and images flashed past, the clanging sounds also stopped, and the surroundings returned to silence. Brother Ju stepped into the room and started to scan the environment. Room 109 was very small. It was less than 10 square meters in size. There were many miscellaneous items in the room, and they were basically useless decorations that could not be moved or picked up. But on a shelf in the corner of the room, there was something very obvious and eye-catching, a treasure chest. Brother Ju strode to the treasure chest, and the unlock panel appeared in front of him. Please enter the 6-digit password. Chapter 509. That doesn't seem right. This popped up on the menu. Okay. Feng Bujue immediately turned around and started to search the room. Obviously, the treasure chest before him was not the kind of puzzle that could be solved on the spot. Instead, he needed to search for clues elsewhere to solve it. Even though this is not a corridor, it doesn't seem realistic for me to stand here and try to key in the password 1,000,000 times. Feng Bujue said as he searched. Currently, I have no idea what will be triggered if I stay in this room for too long. Furthermore, this room is extremely small. If something really does appear, I won't even have a chance to escape. 2 to 3 minutes later, Brother Ju had basically confirmed the situation in room 109. Other than the scare point that came with the shock and this treasure chest that required a password to open, there was nothing else of value. Then there's nothing I can do. Feng Bujue sighed helplessly as he left the room. After he returned to the corridor, he continued to walk in the direction that he came from. It did not take long for him to arrive at a crossroad. There, Brother Ju discovered another map, Cedar County Public Hospital 1F floor plan. Similar to the map on the second floor of the hospital, this map looked very confusing. However, Feng Bujue seemed to be able to understand it. I was right. Many parts can be overlapped. This time, he had experience. To avoid attracting Chad's attention, he only spent a short amount of time memorizing the whole map before he turned to leave. According to the map, Feng Bujue was already coming up with a plan as he hurried down the corridor. This corridor should lead to the cafeteria. On the way, I'll pass by the pediatric clinic, and the blood bank is in the basement. Then, he soon arrived at the corridor that led to the pediatric clinic. The gynecology department was just next door. Not far away, there was a T-junction. After taking a turn there, he would be able to reach the pediatric ward. Just as Feng Bujue was about to pass through the intersection, a string of bell-like laughter suddenly rang in his ears. Hey, just how many quest lines are there in this scenario? Feng Bujue could not help but grumble under his breath. At the same time, he turned his head toward the voice. The laughter came from a fork on his right. The lights in that corridor seemed to be broken. Other than the few meters around the intersection, it was pitch black. 7 or 8 meters away, at the intersection of darkness and light, the figure of a child was standing there. She wore a red dress and looked like she was only 8 or 9 years old. Her long black hair covered her face and fell to her chest. The ethereal laughter made one's hair stand on end. She is standing in the shadows. Feng Bujue mumbled. Then it is impossible to tell whether she is a monster or a ghost, but judging from her appearance and behavior, she is most likely a ghost. Uncle. The little girl suddenly spoke. Do you like sweets? Hey, is something wrong? Feng Bujue said. That kind of question should be asked by a strange uncle to a little girl, right? Perhaps. Feng Bujue looked at the girl and replied, but that was as good as a blank answer. I have some sweets here. Do you want some? The little girl asked. What flavor? Feng Bujue threw back a question. The little girl ignored his question and said, If you help me comb my hair, I will share some sweets with you. Brother Ju had a flash of inspiration, and his right hand instinctively reached for the small comb in his pocket. Okay. Uh, when he answered, there was still some hesitation. He felt something was off. Then, when you are free, come find me at my sick room. There's a mirror there. After the little girl said that, she turned around. The red shadow walked away, but there was no sound of footsteps. After the man completely disappeared from his sight, Fong Bujue stood where he was for a few seconds before mumbling to himself. There is no hint for the quest. He stroked his chin and thought to himself, is this a trap or a part of another quest? After thinking about it for half a minute, he decided to put this matter aside for now. Since the girl said, when you are free, it meant that there was no need for him to follow her there. With that decision made, he moved again and headed toward the pediatric consultation room about 10 meters away. The quest won't be that easy, right? When Fong Bujue reached the door, that was the thought that crossed his mind. He reached out to grab the doorknob, and as he expected, the system announcement popped up. The door is locked. Is it locked and cannot be opened? Fong Bujue asked. In other words, to find a key in this room, I need to find another key to open the door to this room. He sighed. Fine. Fong Bujue sighed. Fine, this was a common occurrence in puzzle-solving games, so there was nothing to complain about. Fong Bujue turned to walk back. He planned to deal with the hair comb for candy incident first. To his surprise, when he returned to the junction and prepared to move forward, he heard the system say, the road ahead is shrouded in dangerous darkness. Do you really want to go there? A death flag. Fong Bujue knew what that meant. He quickly retreated to the junction. No wonder the little girl said, when you are free. So, if I follow her directly, something like a flashlight will happen. He scratched his head. Then, should I go find something like a flashlight first? After he said that, a thought flashed through his mind. Right? There should be one in the security room, right? With that in mind, Fong Bujue started to recall the 1F map and quickly remember the location of the security room. Then, I shall go to the security room. Brother Bujue was not worried. After all, he had triggered a bunch of random events, so it did not matter where he went first. Soon, he returned to the junction that he had passed earlier. He glanced at the map again to deepen his impression of the place. Then, he walked in the direction of the hospital lobby. After passing through 2 corridors, ignoring some forks and stairs at strange angles, he successfully arrived at the hospital lobby. When he arrived, Fong Bujue was surprised to find that the hospital door was open. In real life, this was nothing new. Higher-level hospitals had emergency rooms overnight, so it was normal for them to open at night. However, in horror games with limited settings, be it a mansion, a research institute, a hospital, a house, or a ruin, the exits were usually closed, and there was rarely any setting for escape. Humph! Open the door? Do you think I would fall for this? Fong Bujue stood at the entrance of the hospital and looked at the parking lot outside. He said calmly, the main mission clearly states that I have to stay at my post. If I step out, I will definitely die. Suddenly, a long, mournful wail sounded from behind Brother Bujue. Then there was another wail. In the 2 seconds that Fong Bujue turned around, the mournful wail filled the entire hospital lobby. When he looked back, he saw nothing. Again? Fong Bujue said as he put on his sunglasses. What? He wailed again. Looking out from his sunglasses, he saw a large group of ghosts. The ghosts were all gathered in front of the registration counter, and they were lining up. Fong Bujue took off his sunglasses and put his hands together to express his helplessness. He ignored the mournful wails and walked towards the security room. Fortunately, the door of the security room was not locked, and he went straight in. There were 2 rooms in the room. More than half of the room outside was occupied by surveillance equipment. There were 2 swivel chairs in front of the console, and the remaining space was barely enough for people to walk around. There was a smaller room behind it, which was probably the changing room. Fong Bujue was interested when he saw the surveillance footage. He took 2 steps forward and sat in front of the console. After familiarizing himself with the controls, he started to adjust the cameras to observe the situation around the hospital. Unfortunately, more than half of the surveillance footage was covered in snow, and he couldn't see anything clearly. As for the remaining cameras, The angle of view was fixed and could not be adjusted. Moreover, the images captured were all empty corridors. Feng Bujue wanted to look at the footage on the computer, but he needed to enter the administrator password to open any drive. He was very depressed, so he clicked on the Start menu and opened a few games that came with the system. He used the name Hey 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 to set the highest record for Minesweeper, Hearts, and Solitaire to calm himself down. Then, he left the console and walked towards the changing room. There was no lock on the changing room's door. Feng Bujue turned the knob and opened it. After pushing the door open and entering the house, he casually turned on the light switch. The room in front of him only had a row of lockers and a few square meters of standing space. The conditions were extremely simple. The management of this hospital is so convoluted that I can't even look at them in the eye. Feng Bujue looked at the mottled walls, the shabby cement floor, and the rusted lockers, and he could not resist the urge to complain. Even though the male workers do not need to lock the door when they change into their work clothes, there's not even a stool in the changing room. There were a total of 8 lockers in the changing room, and they were lined up against the wall. Feng Bujue walked forward and tried them one by one. In the end, only one of them worked. Once he opened the door, a moldy smell drifted out from the locker. There was an iron bar on top of the locker, and 2 plastic clothes hangers hung from it. Behind the door was a poster of a swimsuit girl. It looked like a creature that was half human and half otter. From the style of the swimsuit and Lester's sexual orientation, it should be female. There was another item at the bottom of the locker, a flashlight, a key, a seriously moldy sandwich inside a plastic bag, a newspaper, and a small mirror. Among them, the flashlight and mirror were categorized as tools. There was no item description on the newspaper, and the remaining 2 items were plot items. Item name, key item type, plot item quality, normal, function, open a door somewhere, can be taken out of the scenario. No. Remark. This is a spare key that Lester secretly made. It can be used to open a door. Where else can it be used to open a door? Feng Bujue guessed the use of the item once he saw the remark. Isn't it the storage room on the 3rd floor? Name, moldy sandwich, item type, plot item quality, trash function. Can it be eaten? Can be taken out of the scenario? No. Remark. Normally, only those with a serious case of hoarding would store something that has seriously gone bad. Even this thing cannot be taken out of the scenario. Feng Bujue mumbled to himself as he read the item description. Where will it be used? Is there a patient who likes to eat rotten food in a sick room? He held the newspaper in his hand and placed the other items inside his pocket before leaving the changing room. After he returned to the surveillance room, he sat down on the chair and started to read the newspaper. Based on his personality, he was going to read the whole thing, but unfortunately, the system restricted him from doing so. 90% of the newspaper had been blurred. The Monster Kingdom used English, and so far, Feng Bujue could only see English text at the hospital. However, the system's translation function would translate the corresponding Chinese text to his eyes. Only a small part of the newspaper could be read clearly. Bad news. The disaster at Cedar County's public hospital. That was the headline of the article. Just from the title, Feng Bujue had a bad feeling. According to our Cedar County news agency, December 5th, reporter from Shrek, as of 16 a.m. on December 5th, the avalanche that happened at the northern part of the kingdom, Cedar County, has been going on for 17 hours. Due to the increasing snowstorm, the search and rescue work has slowed down and large vehicles are unable to get close to the area. Manual excavation work is difficult due to heavy snow and landslides. According to experts, if the rescue route cannot be opened within 24 hours, the chance of survival will be infinitely close to 0. What? Feng Bujue read the article and reread it several times. What's going on? He folded the newspaper, shoved it into his pocket, and hurried out of the security room. When he returned to the hospital lobby, the cries had disappeared, and he could not see any ghosts through the sunglasses. Brother Ju placed his hands on his waist and stood before the entrance of the hospital. He looked at the quiet parking lot outside. The snow mountain and the lights of the city could be seen faintly. If this place has already been buried, then I am currently inside a dream? He quickly filled in the gaps in his mind. Perhaps Lester is already a ghost? That's not right. Then why do I need sunglasses to see my own kind? His eyes shifted. Could this be a newspaper from the future? Wait a minute. The time shown on the computer earlier was... Phone Bujue remembered that when he was playing the game, the date shown on the computer was already 2 a.m. on December 6th. When he thought about this, he turned back to confirm it. But this time, when he opened the door to the security room, all the monitors at the control panel only showed white snow. As Phone Bujue's eyes moved, the images also flickered strangely. Then, the scene from the beginning of the scenario appeared again. Blood, organs, scary faces, but this time it was shown on more than 10 screens at the same time. Phone Bujue stood at the door and hesitated for a moment. In these short 10 seconds, the lights in the security room had quietly turned dark red. The whole room started to twist, and strange creaking noises came from all around. On the wall opposite from the control panel, 3 black stains slowly appeared. They slowly expanded to form a horrified human face. Tisk. Phone Bujue knew that he could not stay there any longer. He took 2 steps back and closed the door. This time, I can't go to the security room anymore, and the electronic clock and calendar in the lobby are off. In other words, after I read the newspaper, I won't be able to confirm the date anymore. Phone Bujue thought to himself, oh well, at least I found a flashlight. I should go to the pediatric ward to take a look. He did not dwell on it. In fact, Brother Ju was getting more and more excited. Without realizing it, he was immersed in the joy of solving the mystery. The main mission and side mission were just a formality. His ultimate goal, or rather, the thing that he wanted to do the most, had become solving the mystery of this scenario. If there was a book, it would be long. If there was no book, it would be short. After 2 ellipses and 8 words, Brother Ju returned to the fork that led to the pediatric ward. Before he came here, he purposely went to the pediatric clinic to try the key in his pocket, but naturally, it failed. He took out the flashlight from his pocket, switched it on, and shone it ahead. The dark corridor was like a giant mouth that could swallow a person whole. It was silent and oppressive. The light from the flashlight could only illuminate a very small area. This kind of cold and scary atmosphere was enough to deter many people. However, Phone Bujue did not mind at all. He hummed, waved the flashlight left and right, and walked in leisurely. Shaolin Kung Fu, wake up Shaolin Kung Fu. Wake up Shaolin Kung Fu. Wake up Shaolin Kung Fu. I use Iron Head Kung Fu. Invincible Iron Head Kung Fu. You use King Kong Leg. King Kong Leg. The song that he chose was unclear. Technically speaking, it was a duet, and he did not know how to sing Cantonese songs. In any case, the melody flashed through his mind, and he started to sing happily. A normal person would sing in this kind of environment, mainly to ease the tension and fear. Phone Bujue, on the other hand, looked like he was taking a stroll around the residential area after dinner, and he was mumbling to himself. He walked into the corridor with the flashlight, and the system did not say anything. It looked like the death flag had been removed, and he could move on normally. Wah, wah. Brother Ju did not walk far before another sound came. This time, it was a baby crying. So, how many side missions are there? Phone Bujue mumbled. The baby's room is haunted as well, right? Okay. He looked in the direction and walked toward the source of the crying. Chapter 510. Soon, Phone Bujue followed the sound of crying and came to the hospital's nursery. Brother Ju was familiar with ghost babies. He had encountered them in Yi Jie's high school scenario. At the time, his combat ability was no different from a normal person's, so he could easily deal with the monster. Therefore, at this moment, he was quite confident. Sounds like there's more than one. Phone Bujue walked to the nursery door and realized this problem. Could it be that someone is trying to open the door and kill me? He thought to himself, do I have to take all the candy before I can open the door? He titled his head and frowned. Now that I think about it, newborn babies shouldn't be able to eat candy, right? Or perhaps the babies in the monster kingdom are born with super digestive systems. He hesitated for a while before pushing the door open. After all, there were no obvious signs of death there. In terms of horror, it was not as obvious as room 109. After entering the room, Fong Bujue was faced with a rectangular space of 70 to 80 square meters. There were more than 10 mini beds arranged neatly. The beds were surrounded by railings, probably to prevent the babies from rolling down. After scanning the room with a flashlight, Brother Ju realized there were only 5 beds with babies. 4 of them were placed at the 4 corners of the nursery, and the last one was placed on the bed closest to the door. The 4 babies were crying, but the one at the door was very quiet. As the saying goes, a dog that bites does not bark. Fong Bujue mumbled as he took out the foldable knife. At the same time, he shone the flashlight on the baby closest to him. In the end, the child actually raised a hand to cover his face and said, "Hey, what are you doing? Are you going to blind me? Move the light away." His voice was startling. He sounded like a young man in his 20s or 30s. He spoke with a heavy black accent. For a moment, Fong Bujue thought he was hallucinating because the voice was too comical in this kind of environment. One sentence was enough to wash away all the horror. "What's going on? Is that you, Chris? Chris?" He slowly moved the flashlight away and took 2 steps forward. Here, Brother Ju made a little joke with his inappropriate sense of humor. The Chris he was talking about was Chris_Rock. "Who?" the baby asked. "What nonsense are you talking about? I'm Martin." I'm sorry." Fong Bujue finally got a good look at the man's face. The Martin in front of him was indeed a baby, but judging from his size, he wasn't a newborn, but a 7 or 8-month-old child. His skin was indeed dark, and there was a sharp horn on his head that looked like a lightning rod. "Are you a security guard here?" Martin looked up at Brother Ju and asked. "Yes," Fong Bujue replied. "Oh, you came just in time. Can you shut those 4 brats up? They're driving me crazy." Martin sat up and pointed to the other 4 babies in the 4 corners of the room. At this moment, those children were still crying. Then what should I do?" Fong Bujue asked. "Do you need me to teach you everything? How did you grow up?" Martin replied, "Even a blind person can see that they are hungry. Hurry up and find a way to feed them." "I see. Do they need to be breastfed?" Brother Ju replied, "I know a nurse." He made a lifting gesture with his hand on his chest. "Maybe she can help. Is there a F*** hole in your brain?" Martin continued to scold in a rhythmic, rap-like tone. "Don't you even know what babies need to eat?" His words were mixed with the word F from time to time, and he was still in the middle of it. "Wow, Mr. Ma, you're young, but you're quite good at swearing," Fong Bujue complained. Martin glared at Fong Bujue and gave him a short middle finger. Okay, Fong Bujue also understood that talking nonsense was not going to continue. He also understood that the children in the Monster Kingdom did not need to be breastfed. So he asked, "Then what should I feed them?" "Vomit. What else can it be?" Martin replied matter-of-factly. "Huh? Are you trying to impress upon me the fact that you're an idiot with that look?" Martin asked. After a brief moment of shock and hesitation, Brother Ju soon came to a conclusion. He sighed. "Sandwiches are used like that." He took a deep breath. "In a way, this scenario is very challenging. What are you mumbling about?" Martin urged and pointed at a corner of the room. "The bottle is there. Spit it out and screw the cap back on. Have I made myself clear enough? Don't tell me you don't even understand what I'm saying." It's very clear." Fong Bujue looked serious and walked toward the direction that Martin was pointing at. The look in his eyes said that he was ready to sacrifice himself. The notification of side mission triggered rang in his ears. The sentence, "Use vomit to feed 4 monster babies," appeared in the mission tab. A clear mission instruction, a simple mission line that could be completed immediately. None of that was a problem. The only problem was the content of the mission. Brother Ju soon walked to a long table by the wall. There was a metal tray on the table, and on the tray were 4 bottles that looked like milk bottles. Inside the tray, and at the bottom of the bottles, there was a sticky liquid with a strange color. It did not look like milk at all. This is so convenient. I don't even need to wash up," Fong Bujue said as he placed the flashlight on the table. He reached out to open the bottles one by one. Next was the step of creating food. I have to look on the bright side. Feng Bujue took out the plastic bag from his pocket. When he opened it, a strange smell of rot and mold assaulted his nostrils. At least I don't have to worry about not having anything in my stomach, and I don't have to dig my throat out. Brother Jew took out the sandwich and took a bite. His plan was to finish this as soon as possible. He would swallow the thing in 3 to 5 bites and then spit it out. But with the first bite, he felt like he had been tricked. The disgust of the sandwich was far beyond his expectation. The overflowing juice, the mold that stuck to his teeth, the wiggling maggots, they were all challenges to the limits of human psychology and physiology. Thriller Paradise had always been good at simulating disgusting substances like this. If this was a normal person, they would have retreated immediately after taking a bite because they would not have been able to withstand this kind of torture. But Feng Bujue, his eyes soon turned from shock to anger. He seemed to have made up his mind about something. He moved his jaw violently and used his teeth to grind the unknown substance that was stuck together. He swallowed it all. Then, after about 5 seconds, he lowered his head and vomited until the first bottle was full. Okay, 3 more bottles. He picked up the remaining sandwich with a determined gaze and took another bite. Just like that, 5 minutes later, Feng Bujue successfully filled 4 milk bottles with vomit and attached nipples to the bottles. Humph! That's all there is to it. Ha ha ha! He laughed like he had just completed a great feat then. He ran to a nearby water tank, turned on the faucet, and rinsed his mouth. Thankfully, the water in the Monster Kingdom was still water. If something like sulfur leaked out from the pipes, Feng Bujue would not know what to do. He gulped down water, rinsed his mouth, and retched for a long time before the taste in his mouth disappeared. Then, he took out the chewing gum from his pocket and popped all 3 in his mouth at once. He chewed furiously. Is this quest really for humans? Brother Jew placed the 4 bottles on the tray and walked to the first baby in the corner. Even though I'm playing the role of a monster in the scenario, the system should know that I'm a player, right? The next step was much simpler. When the monster babies saw Brother Jew walk over with the food, they raised their hands, and their crying turned into babbling noises. Feng Bujue had just reached the bottle out when it was snatched away. Looking at the babies sucking on the liquid inside the bottle with relish, even Brother Jew could not help but turn to look at them. Ah, this is much quieter. After the 4 babies quieted down, Martin, who stood at the door, sighed in relief. Feng Bujue placed the tray back on the table and walked back to the door. He glanced at the game menu and realized that the quest had not been checked off. It looked like he still had to report back to Martin. It feels like in this universe, or any other universe, there is nothing that I cannot do. Brother Jew sighed as he stood before Martin and said in a light tone. At that moment, he was thinking, if the reward for this quest is trash, I'll stab you to death. Well done, brother, Martin said. If they keep this up, I'm going to have a nervous breakdown. By the way, do you have a cigarette? Feng Bujue looked at the baby before him with a wooden expression. Then he silently took out half a pack of cigarettes from his pocket and handed it over. Martin pulled one out and put it in his mouth. Then, he raised his eyes to look at Brother Jew and shrugged. Since the subtext was obvious, Brother Jew did not say anything. He took out his lighter and lit the cigarette for the man. Fuh! Martin exhaled a ring of smoke. I haven't had a puff in a long time. This pack is all yours, Feng Bujue said as he put the cigarette and lighter on the man's small bed. Thank you. Martin smiled. His smile was as creepy as it could get. I think you're a good guy, and you've helped me a lot. I'll give you something as a token of my appreciation. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.